Number 10. Robin. Although Robin could be classified as a sidekick, this moment happened when he was leader of the Teen Titans, so I'm going to consider him a superhero for the sake of this video. In Volume 1, Issue 4 of the Teen Titans in the 1960s, Robin went to the 1964 Olympics with the rest of the team, plus additional guest member Speedy. He went there to help encourage Davy Bradley to compete in the Olympics. However, the team come up against the agents of Diablo and are knocked out and trapped, having to be saved by Bradley himself. The fact that they are saved by a shy Olympic runner is not the embarrassing part of the story, oddly enough. The part where Robin is defeated by hurdles is, not by doing them, unfortunately, but still pretty hilariously by having them just thrown at him. He gets all tangled in them, and the panel before shows him with both his hands free. Isn't Robin supposed to be nimble and strong? They acknowledge his impossible strength in this very comic, and yet he cannot catch these hurdles. Instead, he gets all tangled in them. Oh, the 60s. A time when superheroes could pretty much be stopped by a banana peel. Pretty much anyone could be stopped by a banana peel back then, actually. Woo. Number 9. Hal Jordan. So there are a good many moments when it comes to the Green Lanterns embarrassing themselves. Guy Gardner has almost done enough jerkish and embarrassing things for the rest of the entire Corps just by himself. Like that time he mooned Batman. Though I'm sure to him it was really not embarrassing, so he's not the only one to be involved in embarrassing acts. Hal Jordan has also had a few moments I'm sure he wished never happened. Namely, one in All-Star Batman and Robin, where Batman proved how much of a next level jerk he actually was when he and Robin donned yellow suits, and then while Batman was having an argument with Hal, had Robin paint the entire room they were in yellow. An embarrassing weakness of Green Lanterns is the color yellow. This ridiculous weakness was later explained as having to do with Parallax being imprisoned in the Central Power Battery. Why they imprisoned it in the Central Power Battery, we'll never know. That just seems like a bad idea. The cherry on top of this moment was when Batman encourages Hal to try the lemonade. Savage! All-Star Batman is such a bully. Number 8. Reed Richards. While Richards may not have embarrassed himself in the literal sense here, I'm pretty sure he embarrassed his comic book counterpart. The 2000s Fantastic Four film The Rise of the Silver Surfer features a scene where some of the team head to a dance club. Reed Richards goes out onto the dance floor surrounded by gorgeous ladies and finds himself awkwardly shuffling around. They encourage him to loosen up, and I think well, you know what comes next. He starts stretching all over the place, dancing like only Mr. Fantastic can, but also in a way that no one needed to imagine or to see. Oddly enough, everyone seems very impressed by this ridiculous display, until Sue Storm walks in, and then Reed Richards seems to feel pretty embarrassed about wrapping his stretched limbs around all those ladies on the dance floor. At least this version of Richards seems to register when he's made a fool of himself in front of Sue. Ouch, that was so mean. Other times he's just embarrassing himself, and Sue's like, I just have to deal with this guy. Why did I marry this man? Number 7. Tony Stark. Well, Tony Stark has seen a huge resurgence in popularity because of Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of him in the MCU. He wasn't always so great. In fact, in the comic book world, he is well known for being a jerk half of the time. Even young Tony Stark, after the death of evil older Tony Stark, who is working with Kang, manages to somehow be a jerk. His older self dies, and his reaction, though somewhat warranted, is simply to shout, "Amazing!" Yeesh. Alcoholism has also led to a few embarrassing moments for the hero, even in the MCU, like in Iron Man 2 when he peed himself in his Iron Man suit after DJing and dancing around. He may have not felt the embarrassment then, but Pepper Potts and Rhodey were definitely feeling that embarrassment for him. Number 6. Ruined Merchant's Auction. When Wolverine donned his patch disguise to return once more to Madripoor, it was quickly revealed to him that everyone kinda already knew who he was. And while he had come to save a former teammate from being auctioned off as a weapon, he himself ended up on the auctioning block. But although the merchant saw his presence as an opportunity, in the end he realized his mistake, as Wolverine didn't just get away with Maverick as intended, but pretty much ruined his whole auction and Merchant's whole catalog besides. You can check out how badly Wolverine ruined this party by checking out issues number 9 and 10 of the 2020 Wolverine series. Number 5. Resisted the Change. Wolverine's healing factor doesn't just protect him from severe injuries, it also protects him against supernatural related monster rules, such as how they dictate transformations. And if he does end up getting affected by by said rules, the change is typically only temporary for him. Eventually, his healing factor will basically cure him. Case in point, when Old Man Logan faced off with Dracula during his hunt for Jubilee. Dracula managed to attack Wolverine and even bite him in this second volume of Old Man Logan, but the joke was on Drac. Wolverine's healing factor protected him from giving into vampirism, and we learned that he was immune to said bite and its effects. Sorry, Dracula. In the end, Wolverine came out on top, managing to later on decapitate Dracula. Obviously, he came back, but for the Prince of Darkness, King of Lies, Lord of the Undead, this was a pretty embarrassing defeat. Especially as he bit him and then he was like, yes, this didn't work, but that's fine. I'm sure it's taking all of your healing factor to fight off the vampirism. I don't know if it was actually taking all of his healing factor. He did look a little rough, but I feel like Wolverine was like, yeah, sure, bub, all of my healing factor. Number 4, bad karaoke for Maverick and Merchant. Later on in the current Wolverine series, Maverick would take a job from Merchant, deciding in the end to work with him despite Merchant attempting to auction him off previously, and thereby putting Maverick in the crosshairs of Wolverine. With the two at odds fighting over information stored on a Krakoan bug, Wolverine in the end decided to let Maverick think he stole that bug back from him and his friend CIA agent Jeff Bannister, only for Maverick to learn later while handing it over to Merchant that the bug was actually wiped clean and the information on it replaced with tons of Johnny Cash karaoke, likely taken from performances at the Green Lagoon's karaoke night. Oh boy. Number 3, Omega Red versus the Wolverines. You mess with the Wolverine, you get a bunch of them that you have to deal with. You get all the Wolverines. As was evident when Omega Red came to Krakoa seeking to claim what his mutant given right was, to take refuge on the new mutant island nation. And, you know, not be condemned or anything, even though he did bad stuff in the past. However, not everyone was able to forgive and forget when it came to his past, namely Wolverine. Still suspicious of Omega Red, once it seemed as though he'd seen him appear outside of Krakoa and kind of trap him in ice, Wolverine was ready to confront him, already having an uneasy feeling about his former nemesis since pretty much day one. However, when Wolverine explained what had happened to him, to his family, they weren't ready to let him go in alone. He was joined by Daken and Gabby, who both showed Omega Red how easy it was to sneak up on him and get him in a trap. In the end, the discussion had to be tabled, but it was pretty fun to see the look on his face when the Wolverine family came together to attack him. If you were wondering where Laura was, by the way, she'd likely still be in the vault at this time, as per her adventures in the 2019 X-Men series, which is why she wasn't there. Otherwise, I'm sure Laura would also be there. Number 2, found the perfect match for Solemn. After it was revealed that Solemn had taken Logan's Muramasa blade and ended up giving one such blade to the Iraqi pirate, Severe, during Solemn's escape from him, Wolverine tracked Solemn down. He confronted Solemn and was convinced to take on Sever with him together. Later, Solemn bailed on this confrontation in typical Solemn fashion, it seems. However, Wolverine had a few tricks up his sleeve. Realizing that he and Solemn were fairly even matched, he decided to call in some reinforcements. Wolverine went to the White Queen, Emma Frost, and had her join him in their confrontation of Solemn, which she was happy to do as she had her own score to settle with him. They pursued Solemn to the sliver of remaining Araco Island on Earth where he was hiding out. And let's just say that while Wolverine and Solemn could likely fight against one another all day to only really reach a stalemate, Emma was out of Solemn's league. She interrogated him, much to his dismay and embarrassment, because Emma of course can easily access almost anyone's hidden dirty secrets and desires, no matter how dirty and secret and hidden they are. So now she knows everything about Solemn, whether she wanted to or not. Number 1, Ultimate Family Jewels. Oh boy. Of course, a lot of embarrassing moments would come from the Ultimate Universe, wouldn't they? This one hails from issue number 12 of the Ultimate X-Men series. Here, Ultimate Wolverine and Ultimate Sabretooth face off, only for Wolverine to completely embarrass Victor in this fight. As Sabretooth holds Wolverine beneath the water, making him suffocate and killing his brain cells, Wolverine counterattacks by going for his, family jewels, as he calls them. His retort to Sabretooth mocking how he'll never be considered a brainiac now turns to tears and pain as Wolverine responds that at least he's smart enough to cover his family jewels in a fight before he tackles Sabretooth off a cliff.
In at 10, The Flash. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but his story is really humiliating when you think about it. The Bruce Wayne of Earth 52 started off fighting crime with Robins, but they kept dying left, right, and center, obviously, but mostly because of voter call-ins. So understandably, Batman got darker and darker, becoming more extreme with his methods, and he just basically started killing every one of his villains, which honestly seems more realistic to me. Like maybe instead you quit fighting crime, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. This eventually leads him to Barry Allen, who refuses to give Bruce his Speed Force powers for understandable reasons. So Batman then uses his various rogues weapons to fight Barry and knocks him out. Once Barry was unconscious, Bruce tied him to the front of a cosmic treadmill powered Batmobile and drives them both into the Speed Force. When entering the Speed Force, Barry and Bruce end up fusing together into one being, and they turn into a evil Batman with super speed and a lust for killing, while Barry's mind is trapped inside of Bruce's body. Now, some of you may not consider this humiliating, but I think it counts, because like I'd classify that as pretty embarrassing, getting locked inside someone else's body when they're using your superpowers. So yeah, I'll at least put it at number 10. And at 9, Lord Death. Lord Death was a secondary villain that has not appeared too many times in the comic books. He also has a rather peculiar ability. He can't actually die. Whenever he's on the verge of death, Lord Death will actually enter a trance-like state and resurrect himself. How does one stop an enemy that can always come back no matter how many times you kill him, you ask? Well, the answer, for Batman at least, was a rocket. But seemingly not a bat rocket, which is hella unfortunate. Batman straps Lord Death to a rocket and then sends him up into space. Yeah, where the guy ends up spending all of eternity floating in the cold vacuum of ever-expanding space. Beating someone who is named Lord Death that can resurrect himself is kind of already like kind of a flex, but when you're just a mere mortal man and then you do it, it seems like it would be pretty humiliating if you ask me. It would have been more humiliating though if it was Batman using the bat rocket to send him into bat space for the rest of Baternity. I apologize for all the bat puns. I know it was a bit of a stretch, but I have to get my daily pun quota out there somehow. And at 8, Green Lantern Corps. In Dark Knight's Metal, we see a very dark version of Batman from an alternate universe within the Dark Multiverse. In that universe, Batman was given a Green Lantern ring. Batman has indomitable willpower, so he was deemed worthy by the ring, which is actually pretty understandable. The power ring came with some protocols though that ensured that no Green Lantern could ever misuse the most powerful weapon in the universe. Batman not only broke those protocols with his will, but he also outsmarted the entire Green Lantern Corps that had come to stop this rogue lantern. So I think it's safe to say this is pretty damn humiliating for the entirety of the Green Lantern Corps, because Batman defeated every lantern that came to stop him. But he had enough willpower to actually break the willpower of the ring, and then he was able to use it for nefarious means. Like, that feels like it would be like the ultimate kick in the gonads. And at least like if lanterns themselves had gonads. Can like the collective consciousness of the Green Lantern Corps just like manifest like a giant sack for Batman to kick? Because at this point that's what he did. And it's 7, Crazy Quilt. After his eyes were injured in a robbery, Crazy Quilt underwent an experimental procedure which resulted in him seeing nothing but blindingly bright color. This of course somehow turned him into an insane criminal. How insane? Well, first of all, he tried to steal color itself, which no one ever figured out how he planned to do. And second of all, his powers were basically constantly having a illicit substance trip, that is an acronym, that is like LED, which affects literally no one but himself. Even when Crazy Quilt got a helmet that allowed him to project his like crazy eye color lights at people, all Batman and Robin needed to do was like turn a mirror on him and reflect the beam back, and he was done. In all honesty, I don't even think Batman needed to do much here to actually embarrass him. I mean, like, the dude calls himself Crazy Quilt. I think that says enough. Like, I don't know a single person who is scared of quilts. Like, what do you think this name is gonna do? And even if he didn't name himself, I feel like that just adds an extra layer to it, you know? Like, why do you think that they called you Crazy Quilt? Because you want to steal color? No, it's because you're crazy and don't scare anyone.
Number 6, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is an insanely powerful superhero. She has super speed, super strength, can fly, she is telepathic to an extent, can speak any language, and is one of the few heroes with super breath. With all those superpowers, she doesn't really need a shield, but she still sort of gets one in the form of her bracelets, and in the movie in the form of an actual shield. Her bracelets allow her to deflect almost any kind of attack. In her standalone film, we actually saw her use them to deflect an insane amount of bullets, maybe more than the actual shield she was armed with. But as much as her bracelets are a strength, they're also kind of an embarrassing weakness. Anytime she allows herself to get captured by a man and they chain her bracelets, she actually becomes completely depowered. It's like her kryptonite. Why? Because Amazonian law wants her to feel shame and embarrassment at getting captured by a man. Definitely a law made by women. Just punishing you with shame. Shame on you, Wonder Woman. How dare you? Dare you get captured by a man? No actual punishment, just nah. Feel bad about that. Number 5. Superman. While Superman has managed to perform surgery and has powers that allow him to speed read and learn faster than almost anyone on the planet, it is embarrassingly easy to fool him. Apparently. At least it was once upon a time. Way back in the comics, Lex Luthor had a plot to become a seamster of sorts in order to create a new costume for Superman. He manages to convince Superman to let him do so while in disguise, and builds a costume for the hero that has within it kryptonite. Is it somehow sewn like into the fabric or woven in? How does Superman not notice it? Because Luthor sews the lumpy rock, like a giant kryptonite lumpy rock, into the lining but encases it in lead. As you probably know, lead is the only substance Superman's X-ray vision does not work on. Still though, wouldn't he feel the lump and wonder hey, what's that? And then notice he couldn't X-ray through to see it and be suspicious? And maybe at least ask? What is that? Nope. Embarrassingly, Superman appears to be too dumb to notice. I know Lex is supposed to be a super genius and all, but that's a pretty embarrassing loss there for Superman. It's right in the front of the costume too. Ugh, awkward. Number 4. Gladiator. Remember that time Rocket Raccoon defeated Gladiator just by telling him he could? Okay, so he also had a really big gun, more specifically a Zarthian-built quantum cannon. Still, Gladiator is a really strong superhero. He is one of the few Marvel superheroes with super breath. He can fly, is near invulnerable. Beyond that, he can move faster than the speed of sound. If he had wanted to, he could have just dodged the shot from Rocket's cannon, but his power level is intrinsically linked to his self-esteem, so Rocket was able to defeat him simply by saying that he could defeat him. This statement put doubt in Kal Ark's mind in regards to him being able to beat Rocket. So for all his amazing powers and strength, he was defeated by a mere taunt. Sad. Poor Gladiator. Number 3. Wasp. While there are many advantages to being able to shrink yourself like Ant-Man and the Wasp, there are some negatives, especially in the comics coming out of the 1960s, during a time when even female superheroes were painted as damsels in distress constantly. Janet was such a victim in this embarrassing time in comics. While fleeing a battle, she is almost killed by a sparrow. Yeah, a sparrow almost ate her. Of course, she comes up with a smart plan to, grow larger just as it lands to take a nibble. This saves her from being eaten, but her weight causes the branch she's sitting to snap, and she just falls to the ground and is knocked unconscious. Fortunately, there isn't anyone really around for her to embarrass herself in front of, except, for all of us readers, of course. We're just embarrassed about that whole comic situation. Ah, the times before they let Janet Van Dyne actually fight anything. What a strange time it was. Number 2. Alan Scott. Alan Scott was the first Green Lantern and appeared in All-American Comics issue 16 in 1940. He shared similar abilities with those Green Lanterns that would come after him, however, due to his Green Lantern ring. But one thing that he experienced that was quite different was a strange weakness. A weakness for wood. Actual wood, of course, don't be weird. He found this out soon after his adventures when he was beaten with a wooden club. Embarrassingly, Alan constantly found himself troubled by any wooden weapon that villains tried to use on him or lob at him. One panel even shows him just getting hit with a log. Much later in the comics, around volume 3 of Green Lantern from the 90s, DC would attempt to retcon his story, but not to fix this weakness, just to justify it, leaving Alan Scott to be pretty much embarrassed for eternity. Gotta love when DC doubles down on those weird weaknesses. Number 1. Spider-Man. While Alan Scott may have a weakness that causes him many embarrassing moments, no one can compete with Spider-Man in our number 1 spot. Being a teenage superhero pretty much equals always being embarrassed for forever. But beyond the embarrassing moments that we have seen from Peter in the comics, there are also some really terrible film moments. But before we get into that, let's talk about some of those comic moments, shall we? Like that time he gave a speech on how he'd saved the day after possibly snapping Gwen Stacy's neck while attempting to save her. Or, when Black Cat threw up after kissing him. Many of his embarrassing moments, of course, have involved ladies. This one that comes from the film though, not the comics, still also involves Peter's not so smooth moves with the ladies. In Spider-Man 3, Tobey Maguire plays Peter, who attempts a weird jazz as dance sequence involving Gwen in order to make his ex, MJ, jealous. While the entire scene is embarrassing, the worst part is that it doesn't even work in regards to impressing either of the ladies. Also, Spider-Man 3 is full of embarrassing dance scenes. Remember when MJ and Harry did the twist? Oh my goodness. It's just full of terrible moments, that movie. And great moments. So terrible they're great.
And in 10, Superman. The Dark Multiverse is a mysterious dimension. It lies outside of the normal universe. In one of the many universes in the Dark Dimension, Superman went rogue and killed off every hero and villain. No one could actually stop him. The last remaining hero was of course Batman, who could not even believe that his best friend could have done all this. But Batman had a plan. Fail-safe. Surprise. He had studied Doomsday's body and created a virus that could turn himself into a version. Batman then became Doomsday, killed Superman, and then decided to spread this virus all over the earth, turning everyone into a form of Doomsday, which not only humiliates Superman but also kind of embarrassed Batman himself. I mean, like, he probably went nuts because of the whole like he was part Doomsday thing, but still. And at 9, Calabac. Batman had gone toe-to-toe with the New Gods on 2 occasions prior to the New 52, in Comic Odyssey and Final Crisis respectively, but this time he came with a vengeance. In the wake of Damian Wayne's death in the finale of Batman Inc., Bruce happens upon Ra's al Ghul's attempt to resurrect his son in a Lazarus pit, along with his former lover Talia. He prevents the head of the demon from bringing them back to life, as they would emerge as Raz's servants. But before they can actually stop Damian's body from being resurrected, his body gets snatched, and his dead son is ripped from Batman's grasp. And then this guy heads back to Apokolips. This leads Batman to deploy the Hellbat armor and venture all the way to Apokolips to retrieve his son, and in the process ends up fighting Darkseid and Calabac, the Lord of Apokolips's faithful son. And at 8, White Martians. Grant Morrison's Justice League run features the world falling under attack from the villainous White Martians, and it's up to the Justice League, obviously, to stop them. Also, like in the cartoons version of this story, the decisive blow is finally dealt by Batman, who is so badly underestimated by the White Martians because he lacks the superpowers of his fellow teammates. The White Martians managed to capture all of the Justice League and assumed that Batman was killed when they shot down the Batwing. However, the Dark Knight had survived the wreckage because of his plot armor and deduced that they were just as susceptible to fire as Martian Manhunter, due to the fact that they didn't come near his burning plane. Batman swoops in, sets everything on fire like a pointy-eared Human Torch, and saves his teammates. Another lesson in why you should never underestimate him, which reminds me of when like Oliver Queen shot all the Dominators with their own gun in the Invasion crossover on the CW after escaping Dreamworld, which is still one of my favorite Arrow episodes. And in 7th, Cersei. Amazon's Attack was a short crossover that released in the build-up to Final Crisis. The comic saw Cersei manipulate the Amazons into invading the United States, believing that Wonder Woman had been detained by the Department of Metahuman Affairs, which wouldn't really make sense given that she's an Amazon and not a metahuman, but anyway. The Justice League was sent in response, or chose to go on their own at least, and wouldn't you guess it, Batman is right in the front lines. The Amazon Attacks crossover sees the Sorceress underestimate Batman and suffer embarrassment as a result. Batman enlists the help of Zatanna to defeat Cersei, and the League's preeminent magician casts a spell on the Wonder Woman adversary that renders her powerless for a short period of time, allowing for the Dark Knight to get the drop on her and lay the groundwork for Wonder Woman to swoop in and deliver the final blow. And at 6, the Gotham Mob. Batman's "You have eaten well" speech from year 1 may just be the most iconic moment in Batman history. It's the definitive Batman moment in the definitive Batman origin, as the Dark Knight formally announces his presence to the Gotham underworld with an entrance that the Kool-Aid Man would have been very proud of. After blowing up the dining room wall of a Gotham mansion where Carmine Falcone was hosting a get-together with the big criminals of the city, including GCPD Commissioner Loeb, the Dark Knight proceeds to deliver an all-timer of a monologue, vowing that from this moment on, none of you are safe, before extinguishing the last light in the room and leaving in hushed silence. Prior to this sequence, every single mobster and crook in that room thought themselves to be untouchable, but in one fell swoop, Batman eliminates any sense of security that they may have had and brings them crashing back down to Earth. It's one of the most iconic Batman moments of all time, incredibly intimidating, and considering how the whole mob was just bested by one man, pretty embarrassing. Halfway through into number 5, Condiment King. I think this is pretty obvious. I mean, like, Condiment King was meant to be an embarrassing villain. But the first meeting between him and Batman in Batman the Animated Series is absolutely amazing. The Condiment King first appeared in the episode Make 'Em Laugh, voiced by Stuart Pankin. He was whimsical and made many condiment-based puns. For example, the big bad bat guy, I knew you'd catch up to me sooner or later. How I relished this meeting. You, the dynamic Dark Knight versus me, the conceptual Condiment King. "Come, Batman, let's see if you can cut the mustard." However, Batman wasn't down for games, since as Condiment King said cut the mustard, Batman just punches him in the gut. Much to Condiment King's surprise, he falls down and was like, "You punched me!" Like, yeah, of course he did. And then Batman proceeds to tell him point blank, "Look, Mustard Man," or whatever you call yourself, "obviously you're new at this, so I'll go easy on you as long as you give back the loot and promise never to try this again." To which the Sultan of Sauces, he slips on ketchup and falls off the balcony he was standing on, grabbing onto a neon sign to save his life. So yeah, definitely deserving of this list. In it for the Riddler. Last time I talked about a specific instance in which Batman taunts Nigma in front of Green Arrow, but Batman literally solving any riddle that Nigma sends his way is pretty much always humiliating. Like every single time, Nigma thinks that he's come up with like the most genius thing, or that Batman will never solve it, or at least he thinks it will be a tough time solving it, and then Batman solves it and Nigma is just left defeated. Like I know it's not like in the typical sense embarrassing, but I feel like at this point like the Riddler should have just like given up, okay? He's been beaten so many times. He's the Condiment King of the recognizable and popular rogues. He doesn't really do much, but he's there to kind of like toy with you until like, you know, the world's greatest detective actually uses his brain. You see, if the Riddler had revealed the whole 3 Joker thing instead of the Mobius chair with a riddle, okay, that would have been something. But instead, he's like a walking fudgesicle stick. He doesn't really need Batman to embarrass him, he does it on his own. Although I haven't seen the Batman yet, so maybe he's better in that movie. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Dr. Death. Dr. Death, aka Dr. Carl Helfern, is historically the first supervillain encountered by Batman. In his first appearance in Detective Comics number 29, Dr. Death develops a lethal chemical agent from pollen extract and enacts a plan to use the poison to extort money from wealthy Gotham City citizens. In an attempt to evade capture by Batman, Dr. Death ignites chemicals in his laboratory, presumably killing Jabba, his partner, and himself in the resulting explosion. He comes back in the next issue with the same plan, but Batman intervenes in the plot and upon apprehending the Doctor, discovers that Dr. Death's face is horribly disfigured from the lab explosion, resulting in his whole body having a brown skeletal appearance. But that doesn't stop Batman from basically dismembering this guy in Batman number 29 from 2011, where he just absolutely kicks the out of this hideous creature, saying, "Let me help you with that, this is when I hurt you," and then proceeds to help snap his bones. So yeah, this is like the second worst thing that happened to Helfern, the first being looking like that. Penultimately, in at number 2, Lex Luthor. Close on the heels of the incident of No Man's Land where Lex Luthor tried to unsuccessfully take over the city of Gotham, the DC villain was so angry at Bruce Wayne for ruining his project that he actually cooked up a plan to put Bruce behind bars. Lex approached David Kane, who was upset at Bruce for another reason, and enlisted him to make sure that Bruce would be the main suspect for the murder of Vesper Fairchild, who the millionaire had been seeing for a while. It's actually a plan that works too, for Bruce is eventually arrested for a crime that he didn't commit. It takes Bruce nearly a year to clear his name, but once he does, he gets Lex back in one of the most incredible ways that someone has beat Lex. Batman shows up, beats Luthor down, and then tells him, quote, "You are penniless, Luthor. As of this morning, Bruce Wayne owns this property, and he wants you out of the building." Considering how Luthor's whole identity is wrapped around trying to beat heroes using his tech, losing that tech to Bruce Wayne buying out his building definitely would put a bad taste in his mouth. And finally, in at number 1, Bane. Of all the characters that have broken Batman, Bane is arguably the one who did it the most successfully, because he actually broke him. Everyone loves to talk about the back-breaking beatdown delivered during Nightfall, but the build-up to that saw the masked mercenary preside over the Dark Knight's complete psychological breakdown as well, as he was forced to negotiate a mass breakout of Arkham Asylum and Blackgate Penitentiary. The two would have had their brushes in the following years, but their feud was taken to a whole other level during Tom King's run of Batman in 2016. In that series, Bane had to become dependent on the Psycho Pirate in order to kick his addiction to Venom. Batman also needs the Psycho Pirate though, in order to help Gotham Girl, so he assembles a team along with Catwoman to go to Santa Prisca to abduct him. Bane and Batman fight once again, which actually ends up leading to Bruce suffering another spine-related injury, only for the Dark Knight to deceive Bane by faking a Catwoman double cross, which allows the Feline Fatale to then break Bane's back and complete their plan. So yeah, Bane got his back broken. I mean, Batman didn't do the one, that wasn't the one who did the kicking in this instance, but still, he helped. okay? It's good enough for me.
At number 10, it is the time when Iron Man almost kills a non-Cyttorak powered Juggernaut. In this exchange, Juggernaut is on a tear, and Thor, Ghost, Luke Cage, and Iron Man appear to try and put a stop to him. Iron Man warns Juggernaut with total confidence to stand down because the numbers are against him. Juggernaut then basically hits L2 and activates his taunt saying, "Then it's almost even." Should not have said that. So instead of humoring any more of this back and forth, Iron Man promptly follows through with his threat and blasts Juggernaut, almost killing him. The blast he hits him with is a sonic beam that he's used before to put down a whole regiment. The attack injures Juggernaut so badly that he's basically like steaming and bleeding from every orifice on his face. It's so bad that Luke Cage has to stop Iron Man before he kills the Juggernaut there and then. And it's pretty clear that Juggernaut had no idea that Iron Man would dominate the battle this much. And it becomes one of the many moments where Iron Man is able to come through and show everyone that he's not only one of the most powerful in the room, but that he's also willing to follow through. Okay, at number 9, we have the time when Iron Man is called to free hostages from an enclosure made of adamantium and vibranium, two of the strongest materials in the known universe. Remember, adamantium is the metal that reinforces Wolverine's skeleton and what his claws are made of, and vibranium is what Black Panther's weapons are made of, which can absorb and amplify sonic energy. So when Cardiac traps his hostages in a massive enclosure made of these materials, he clearly doesn't believe that there's any chance anyone could thwart his plans. But when Iron Man arrives on scene, he promptly backs himself up and basically turns his body into a human missile, rocketing towards the enclosure and busting a huge hole in it with his fist. This allows oxygen to enter the chamber, giving the team much more time to eventually save the hostages entirely. He does break his arm and a few ribs, but once again, he takes a villain's confidence and absolutely shatters it with his supreme power and iron will. At number 8, we have an event that is counted widely as one of Iron Man's most powerful feats. Mandarin and Iron Man find themselves facing off against a common enemy, an army of dragons led by Fin Fang Foom and Chen Su. And the dragons seem to be winning. After some pretty close calls, Iron Man and Mandarin seem to be at a stalemate, realizing that the dragons are just not letting up. At this very moment, Chen Su morphs back into dragon form and makes a final appeal to Mandarin for the rings, citing their power and how he is ill-equipped to control them himself. Iron Man realizes that this may be true, but that he is much more than a man, so he could himself unleash the true power of the rings, and he does. He grabs Mandarin's hands and unleashes an enormous explosion that levels a few mountain ranges as well as Fin Fang Foom and Chen Su in one go. This is another moment where a major enemy underestimates Iron Man's superhuman abilities and pays the price for it. At number 7, we have the time when Iron Man escapes the black hole created when Godkiller self-destructs. What's embarrassing about this event is that Godkiller's intentions are to take Iron Man with it in the blast created by its own self-destruction, and it's very sure that it'll accomplish this task considering Iron Man is aboard it. Godkiller is basically a giant suit of armor and Iron Man is in it. That's strangely hard to explain, but I think you know what I mean. And I don't blame Godkiller for having high expectations for this final feat, considering the black hole it ends up creating is the size of Earth, meaning that it would have 24 times the mass of the sun. So that means that the only thing Godkiller miscalculates, much like everyone else on this list, is Iron Man's strength, speed, and durability. And yeah, Iron Man comes flying out of the black hole, escaping the close call with his life completely intact. And that means that Godkiller obliterates himself basically for nothing, allowing Iron Man to escape to safety, despite the pull of 24 suns on his back. Godkiller gets absolutely owned here, but at least he's not alone. He's got the other 9 villains on this list to talk it out with.
And at 6, Deathstroke. When it comes to comics, Batman and Deathstroke have faced off with each other on many occasions, with no definitive results going one way or the other. One of the most recent battles in the aptly titled Batman vs. Deathstroke comic saw the two fight into a stalemate. It's a fitting conclusion with a duel between the world's greatest detective and the world's deadliest assassin. Bats and Deathstroke then fought each other on top of a cable car dangling over Gotham Harbor. And just as when it seems as though Slade has gotten the upper hand, the Cape Crusader is able to ensnare him with his grapple gun and save the hostage position nearby, at least in the short-lived Beware the Batman animated series, which was released for one season in 2013. Deathstroke may be one of the deadliest figures in the DC universe, but that didn't stop Batman from giving this Terminator reject his just desserts.
Number 5, the Justice League.
In Justice League Doom, the animated movie, Batman is being scolded by the other members of the Justice League for having contingencies to immobilize each member of the League. They are deciding if they should make him leave the Justice League for this. Batman just kinda helps them decide. If you people can't see the potential danger of an out-of-control Justice League, I don't need to wait for a vote. I don't belong here. And he just walks out of there. Superman goes to him and asks what his contingency for Batman himself was, and he says, the Justice League. As someone on Reddit said, Batman is 100% right in this fight. Batman quit on his own terms, Batman built the Justice League's watchtower and has a deep understanding of how it works, and Batman left the watchtower to them, despite having designed, funded, and built it. Number 4. The Flash. The Justice League animated TV show in 2001. After the somewhat newly formed Justice League become fugitives, running and hiding from the Thanagarian troops, they take shelter in a department store. They come up with the solution of trading in their superhero costumes for regular street clothes to disguise themselves. This is when Flash pipes up, trying to voice his opinion about the whole secret identity thing. Batman cuts him off, walking right up to him, pointing at each member who has a secret identity, and straight up just saying their real names. Clark Kent, Wally West, Bruce Wayne. Yeah, shut up, Flash! Number 3. Aquaman. Okay, look, Aquaman does have some serious power, and in recent years, he's gotten a hell of a lot better. Partially thanks to Jason Momoa. But this story, well, it really doesn't make him look good. In Legends of the DC Universe number 27, the Joker goes to Atlantis and convinces everyone there, including Aquaman, that he is the king of the land. Aquaman even admits he's heard of Joker before from Batman, but that he just doesn't pay attention. Aquaman goes to the surface where he suddenly has trouble walking, can't figure out how to contact Batman, and he gets pepper sprayed. Then, Batman shows up and says no to helping Aquaman, so Aquaman attacks him. This gives us a full 3-page spread of Batman completely beating the gills off of Aquaman. Which is even more embarrassing when you realize Aquaman has actual powers. Number 2. Martian Manhunter. Okay, this is a short little moment, but it shows us a side to Bruce Wayne I don't think any of us knew existed. In JLA issue number 27 in 1999, there is a single page. Bruce Wayne is meeting with Clark Kent and a mystery woman who Clark introduces as Hino Ray, and she greets Bruce. In the very next panel, we find out that this woman is actually John Johns, the Martian Manhunter, in disguise. How? Well, Batman says that while the accent was flawless, the name was a dead giveaway. Now this may fly right over your head, it did for me at first, but Ray Hino is the name of Sailor Mars from Sailor Moon. That means that Batman, Bruce Wayne, billionaire and mass detective vigilante who has mortally wounded characters like Darkseid and beats criminals to a pulp with his bare hands, watches Sailor Moon. So does Martian Manhunter for that fact. Is it embarrassing? Up to you, but what? Number 1. Judge Dredd. In the Batman vs. Judge Dredd comic that ended up putting Batman in the world of 2000 AD's most famous character, Judge Dredd, Batman is arrested and taken to the Hall of Justice for being a vigilante and carrying around all the tech and weaponry that Batman does. Judge Dredd refuses to ally with Bruce to fight Judge Death, who is going to Gotham and will kill everyone there and on that Earth, saying that 1. He is going to put Bruce away for 20 years for his crimes, and 2. That Gotham is out of their jurisdiction. Bruce loses it and busts out of his bonds and starts to wail on the judge. Assaulting a judge? That's 10 years in prison. Make it 20, Bruce yells as he kicks Dredd in the face.
Number 10. Deadpool has a breakthrough. A breakthrough. Get it? You will. There have been a few times that Wolverine has shamed and embarrassed Deadpool, especially in combat. One such time, Deadpool was actually the one looking for a fight, and so Wolverine decided to oblige him. But he didn't just do that, he also gave him some pretty witty retorts as well. You see, Deadpool was made to believe that fighting Wolverine would help resolve some issues he has with his own past. And while Wolverine not only schooled him in combat, but also wisdom, at one point Deadpool asks Logan to dig deeper, not knowing at the time what Wade is talking about at all, Wolverine responds with that deep enough murk as he stabs him through with his claws. Wolverine has always had some of the best mid-combat speeches and retorts. He also might have the mutant power of being able to leap and give you a whole speech during that one leap. Number 9. Namor gets beat in his own domain. Surprisingly, Wolverine has seemingly held his own against Namor more than once in the comics. One such time was when the two duked it out in Civil War. Their fight goes down in Wolverine's tie-in issues, mainly being featured in issue 45. Here, not only does Wolverine prove himself on land, but also in the sea, breaking into Atlantis and Namor's palace, and even managing to hold his own in combat against Namor's guards, fighting underwater. And Wolverine isn't usually the best at fighting underwater. He has an underwater suit of Iron Man's to aid him, but it doesn't seem to operate very smoothly for him. Despite this, he gets a few good hits in at Namor, punching him back for a joke that he made when he thought Wolverine was Iron Man about keeping Wolverine on a tighter leash. Yikes. In the end, Wolverine also proves himself to Namor, and despite their disagreement over who should get custody of the criminal Nitro, Namor meets him later at a bar to give Wolverine the information that he was looking for, which I think is pretty nice. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear about more embarrassing moments that Wolverine has doled out, be sure to head on over to Facebook and click that like, because we are going to be putting up more content over there, and there'll be lots of good stuff for you in regards to Wolverine and other heroes. Number 8. Emma Frost's Dirty Secrets Revealed. Dirty, dirty secrets. Actually, it's not that dirty. It's not that dirty of a secret in my mind, but you know. In this moment, it appeared to be, I guess, kind of dirty. During the first Civil War, Wolverine sets out on his own mission to capture Nitro, the one behind the start of the Civil War. Basically, the catalyst, if you will. He does this against the wishes of Cyclops and Emma Frost. When Emma and Cyke confront him about it in the 2003 Wolverine series in issue 46, the issue following the one with Namor, Emma threatens to basically mind wipe him back to a 3-year-old mental capacity. Wolverine responds by putting Emma in her place by 1, reminding her that the psi shields Professor X gave him protects him against her powers, and 2, by revealing that he knows she and Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, used to, team up. Well, Emma seems pretty shocked that Wolverine knows about this and is pretty embarrassed that he outed this previous relationship of hers to Scott. Her reaction is also interesting, as it's also during Civil War I, I believe, that she discloses that Scott does know of their relationship, of her relationship with Tony in the past, in a different comic. Although, you know, maybe this happened after that, but I do believe the issue where Emma brings it up is Civil War issue number 3, and I think that was released before this issue. But maybe the continuity in canon is different than the release order, or I just found a continuity error, and that's what that is.
Number 7. The Hulk. In terms of raw power, Spider-Man stands absolutely no chance against the Hulk. I think his spider sense may give him some kind of advantage, but there is no way he is lasting long in that fight. Unless he gets a power boost in the form of, I don't know, the power cosmic. Oh, that's exactly what happened in the Amazing Spider-Man issue number 328. The Grey Hulk, who yes is a bit weaker and logical compared to his Savage counterpart, is hired by Sebastian Shaw to target Spider-Man. Money's always a good motivator. Unfortunately for Hulk, Spider-Man has been going to the cosmic gym and hitting the cosmic weights. He lands some pretty heavy blows on the Grey Goliath and even blinds him with a new I-beam power. When some kids are put in danger though, Spider-Man ends the conflict quick by punching the Hulk into orbit and then saving him before he suffocates, standing all confident with his hands on his hips and like that. Number 6. The Fantastic Four. In the very first issue of his self-titled magazine, Spider-Man is putting other heroes to shame. Spider-Man infiltrates the Baxter Building, where he is encased in a plexiglass cage that he very easily opens the door to. He takes a single punch from the thing before he throws him into Johnny Storm. When Reed tries to catch Peter, he totally just dodges it and webs up Mr. Fantastic's hands. He uses his spider sense to detect Sue Storm while she's invisible and spins her around really fast with her lasso. But then, Johnny Storm gets him in a circle of flame. He says, and I quote, "Well, I'll just jump over that clown's little trap." It's honestly a pretty impressive display, and it happened in no less than 1.5 pages. The fight ends when Spider-Man lets him know that he's here to join up, and with that little fight was just a display of what he can do. Yeah, That little display would probably do better than a resume. Number 5. Iron Man. In the Civil War storyline, we know that Spider-Man initially is on the side of Tony Stark's Iron Man. But after he sees the lengths that Tony is willing to go to, he has a bit of a change of heart. Obviously, this leads to a scuffle between the two. At this time, Tony had given Peter the Iron Spider suit. What he didn't tell Peter is that he built in an emergency override that would shut down the suit and essentially shut down Peter with the simple phrase Omega Omega Epsilon 9. It's only a bit of a jerk move. You took Peter under your wing, but you're going to plant a failsafe against him? It kind of makes it look like you know you're guilty. But then again, he is a genius, he is a member of the Illuminati, and he is not the kind of guy to take risks. But how is this embarrassing for Tony? Well, I'm glad you asked, my little nerds. Peter is no idiot, and behind Stark's back, he hacked into the suit and built in his own override to override the override that Tony put there. Passcode, surprise. And the suit is back up and running and covers Tony's helmet in a thick layer of web, allowing Peter to get in a good punch and escape. Number 4. Wolverine. This one's a pretty quick one. I bet some of you thought I was gonna pull from the Wolverine vs. Spider-Man comic. I'll do you one better. It should be obvious, but you don't dare insult Mary Jane Watson to Peter's face. In Amazing Spider-Man issue 522, Peter is awoken with a call about a newspaper article claiming Mary Jane has a little entanglement with Tony Stark. It's obviously not true and actually a setup by a villain. But that's not the point right now. Peter got out of his bed in Stark Tower and goes looking for his wife. Along the way, he runs into Wolverine in a room with a very lovely high-up view of the city. Now, Logan decides to start going on about how Mary Jane messed up big time, and after a warning from Peter, he decides to comment on her lack of brains. This lovely little comment gets him thrown through an unbreakable glass window, and it gives him a really colorful way to catch a cab. Number 3. Daredevil. When Spider-Man was in possession of the symbiote suit, he wasn't his normal self. He was much more ruthless. And Spider-Man can already knock criminals into a coma when he is pulling his punches. When Spider-Man interrupts Sin Eater Stanley Carter from attacking Betty Brant and almost killing her, he starts to lay into the guy, beating Stanley while giving him an earful. Peter goes so far that Daredevil notices his heartbeat pounding and pulls him off of the beaten villain. He defends the criminal from Peter, who is seemingly gonna kill him. If you want him, you'll have to come through me. Probably not the best choice of words there, Daredevil. The very next panel shows Daredevil flying through a window. If it wasn't such a serious moment, I would laugh. Nah, I did laugh. Is that wrong? I can't help it, I'm sorry. Number 2. The X-Men. It seems that Spider-Man really shows his skill when he comes into contact with teams of heroes. First the Fantastic Four, and in the 4th issue of Secret Wars, the X-Men. As if dealing with multiple superpowered beings was his speciality or something. I think the best part about these altercations is the way he just keeps talking while he's embarrassing them. After Xavier senses Spider-Man listening in on their conversation, Spider-Man attacks the X-Men a little prematurely, I'll admit. He dodges Wolverine, webs Colossus' face, dangles Rogue from a rod, webs up Nightcrawler faster than he can say BAMF, and swats Wolverine away with a single swing and escapes. It's just so crazy to me how he knows that he easily outclasses almost every one of the X-Men. Or if not, he knows exactly how to subdue them. Number 1. Superboy. If we're doing a video about characters embarrassing other heroes, there is almost always going to be one point that has to do with the DC and Marvel crossover event. Just like the first point, this isn't actually Peter Parker though, but it's a clone of him, so that's basically the same thing. When the DC Marvel crossover happened, Ben Reilly had taken up the Spider-Man mantle. And it was him that fought Superboy on a rooftop. To get things going, Spider-Man hits the Superboy with a webbing right to his very stylish sunglasses. Superboy, just trying to get a hit on our Spider friend, busts a hole into a water tower, drenching the entire battlefield. Spider-Man wouldn't stand too long in a one-on-one slugging match with this guy. But that's not his specialty anyways. Just as Superboy is about to land a flying blow into Spidey, he jumps out of the way, firing webbing all over the guy and leaving the soaking wet Superboy to fly straight into an electrical box, taking him right out of the fight. Number 10. The Human Torch. Johnny Storm and Peter Parker have been very close friends for a long time. And in comic books, where there is friendship, there is competitive rivalry. In the first video, I talked about the time the Fantastic Four first met Spider-Man, and the way he embarrassed every single one of them. Well, now I want to talk about something a little sillier. In the Spider-Man/Human Torch I'm With Stupid miniseries, Johnny Storm hires Peter Parker to get really good pictures of him since he just became a hero and he wanted some good publicity. Yes, really. Wanting some pictures of Johnny against a villain, he goes to Dr. Doom's lair and gets himself encased in a block of ice. Yes, really, again. Spider-Man saves him and swings him away and makes web ice picks to start getting Johnny out of his popsicle form. But after Johnny struggles a little bit too much, Peter accidentally chips away the part of ice holding Johnny's beloved golden hair, leaving him bald and crying for Reed Richards to fix the problem. Yes, really, for a third time. Number 9. Ghost Rider. Say what you want about Spider-Man, but he is a hero, through and through. And sometimes he needs to remind others how to be that. In Spider-Man number 7 in 1990, Spider-Man and Ghost Rider are working together to defeat Hobgoblin. A kid named Adam gets grabbed by Hobgoblin, causing Spider-Man to look for a less direct approach. But not Ghost Rider. He barrels straight into Hobgoblin on his motorcycle, hitting Adam as well. Spider-Man gets to Adam before he crashes right into a wall. As Ghost Rider gets his hands on the unconscious Hobgoblin and is about to do his penance stare on him, Spider-Man interrupts him, saving Hobgoblin and giving Ghost Rider an earful about what it means to be a hero, sending him walking away in shame. Number 8. Doctor Strange. If you've seen Spider-Man No Way Home, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't yet, allow me to explain or skip to the next point if you don't want spoilers, but I promise you, I'll keep it light. Okay, so basically a whole whack of stuff takes place and Doctor Strange and Spider-Man end up fighting over an artifact. During the scuffle, Doctor Strange brings him and Peter to the mirror dimension, where things just go, well, kind of spirally and just insane. It's actually a really fun scene to watch, but basically, Peter realizes the mirror dimension is based on geometry, and he's great at geometry. And utilizing the absolutely amazing power of math, he strings up Doctor Strange, takes the artifact and Strange's sling ring, and leaves him webbed up and stuck in the mirror dimension. Hey you, I just wanted to briefly stop you here, just to say, thanks. Thanks for being you. And thanks for liking and commenting and subscribing. I love reading your comments, even the mean ones. You should check us out on Facebook too if you wanna. Alright, moving on.
Number 7. Is Hulk really the strongest there is? Yes, he still is, I think. He is the strongest there is. But he's not always the smartest, as is proven here in this fight against Wolverine from Incredible Hulk issue 340. Now it should be noted that in this fight, Wolverine is actually taking on the Grey Hulk, which isn't known for being one of the strongest personas or versions of the Hulk. But still, the impressive part here isn't so much even Wolverine's skill and strength as a fighter, although you're likely to be impressed by that somewhat still if you're so inclined, but the smarts and character development we see Wolverine display here. Wolverine accidentally picks a fight with Hulk by insulting him, unintentionally. Hulk responds by attempting to attack Wolverine, who manages to get the first slash and kind of dodge in successfully, but then decides to take the higher road and actually chooses to apologize to the Hulk, not wanting to fight him and attempting to fight against his own internal animalistic desire and instincts to do so. When Hulk refuses to let him go and says, "I've gotten smarter and you've gotten gutless," Wolverine replied with, "Knowing when to fight and when to walk away is more smarts than you'll ever have." Yeah, I like that. Such a good Wolverine line to Hulk. Like, I'm just like, whoo! Ouch, you're gonna need some ice for that burn, Hulk. Number 6. Cable and Bishop both get bested. I can't even believe that this happened. Cable is considered an Omega level mutant, and yet Wolverine was still able to take him down. And for reference, Wolverine is considered beta level when it comes to his abilities and his control over them more specifically. At least, I think he's still considered beta level. He's definitely not Omega level, I'll tell you that much. Granted, Wolverine did have some help here from Bishop, and does at least choose to spare Cable during their fight as part of the Executioner song story. You see, he thinks that Cable is actually the one they're looking for, but really it's his evil twin Strife. Wolverine isn't quite ready to kill him dead though, not knowing about Strife, but he does have a small amount of doubt that stays in his head. So he's like, I'm just gonna hold off, because even though I think it's you, we don't know for sure. You're making me doubt it. Then when Bishop attempts to finish the job, because he's like, no way, we just hunted this guy down, we fought him, that's it, Wolverine in turn shows up Bishop by slicing his gun to pieces so that he can't actually kill Cable with it, telling him to cool off before getting another gun off the rack and getting back to sorting out this whole mess with Cable's currently very suspicious appearance and self. Even though, like we said, it's Strife, but we didn't know that yet. Or well, Wolverine didn't know that yet, at least. Number 5, Jean Grey gets more help than she bargained for. Jean gets more help than she asked for from Wolverine in this issue of X-Men. In fact, she didn't even really ask for his help to begin with, but she did complain about her ability to move freely in her outfit and her struggle to kind of like tear it so that she could move a little bit more freely. Which obviously was a classic mistake because you know Logan is always more than happy to help Jeannie gain more mobility by maybe, you know, parting with pieces of her garment. Hey, he's just trying to help her out. This all goes down in the very first X-Men Christmas special that we ever got. In this story, the X-Men are kidnapped, and it's during their daring escape that Jean complains of her inability to move freely. She's trying to like tear her dress. So Wolverine, being the gentleman he is, sees her struggling and decides to help her tear away the bottom half of her gown, freeing up her movement, but at the expense of both irritating and seemingly confusing Jean, who actually responds with, "Hey, not so blasted short. Thank you very much. I think." I just love that whole response. She's like, I'm mad, but like, what even happened? Number 4, Cyclops is shamed. When Emma and Scott started seeing one another, Wolverine was pretty quick to embarrass them and shame them in front of the rest of the team. Mainly, he focused his ire on Scott, who he saw as betraying Jean's memory. And he wasn't alone either. By the way, at this point, Jean had recently died and Scott and Emma were together, but yeah, people all felt pretty weird about it. A lot of the other X-Men felt similarly, and they began to actually treat Scott differently because of his and Emma's relationship. This was because the two had started seeing one another psychically while Scott was still with Jean, but he and Marvel Girl, as she was formerly known, were having marital problems at the time. He had a psychic affair with Emma, and then after Jean died, immediately started like just being in this very public relationship with her. Wolverine even went so far as to fight Scott physically over this blossoming relationship with Emma. Don't worry though, Jean's ghost would arrive to give Scott the green light so we could all feel better about the whole thing. Jean's ghost always coming back to be like, look, everyone just be cool. I'm Jean's ghost. I am like a god. Number 3, Shatterstar gets shattered. That's right, Wolverine pretty much completely embarrassed and obliterated Shatterstar in the Executioner's Song story. While Shatterstar did seem to miraculously survive here, Wolverine gave him a fistful of claws, not only embarrassing Shatterstar, but also leaving Richter pretty distraught amidst the loss of his most dearest friend. Even back in the 90s, the feelings were pretty strong between Richter and Shatterstar, as is evident here, and in many of the comics. This all went down in an epic fight between various X-teams, including a split-up X-Men roster into 2 separate teams, Blue and Gold, and X-Factor besides. Wolverine is quick to jump into action, and Shatterstar doesn't even get to show off his own impressive fighting skills much before Wolverine turns him into a shish kebab. For someone who is known for being a proud warrior, this whole display, I imagine, would be pretty disappointing for Shatterstar. While he didn't physically die from his injury here, he may have died of embarrassment. Number 2, Spider-Man gets hit where it hurts. In the heart. You can tell that this was a moment that really was upsetting to Peter Parker's Spider-Man because of how he reacts to it. At one point when both Wolverine and Spider-Man are staying in Avengers Tower, Pete and MJ, who is also there with Peter, have a kind of a relationship scandal. A news story is basically being spread around that MJ, who is still married to Peter at the time, is having an affair with Tony Stark. While Peter is distraught about this, Wolverine takes the opportunity to make a joke at MJ's expense and at the expense of her and Peter's relationship. He says, and I quote, "Sweet Cheeks messed up big time. It's not your fault she screwed up. I mean, if she had brains to go with all that beauty, she wouldn't be with you in the first place, right?" Ouch! Peter of course reacts by pushing Wolverine so hard that he goes flying through and out of a ceiling-to-floor window in the high-rise that was supposed to be made of unbreakable glass. So you can tell that that one probably cut real deep for Peter. Whew. Number 1. The X-Force are defeated. The defeat of Shatterstar was just the beginning for the X-Force, unfortunately, in Executioner's song. Shortly thereafter, they would also be tracked down by Wolverine and taken out primarily by him and Psylocke, forced to surrender to the Blue X-Men and X-Factor teams. And they were backed into a corner fairly easily, I gotta say, with Wolverine choosing to hunt them down and citing it as one of the things he is best known for, which obviously here he proves he is best known for it. He's pretty good at hunting people down. Although I imagine X-Force, like the other teams, also felt pretty conflicted about this whole fight against their friends, so this combined with Wolverine's ruthlessness probably helped to convince them in surrendering. Still, pretty embarrassing that basically Wolverine and Psylocke show up and they're like, hey, we're just gonna do this, and then everyone comes in at the end to be like, yeah, we're here too.
At number 10, we have the time when Thanos turns Nova into literal Lego pieces. After Thanos faces off against a large group of heroes and starts picking them off one by one, it's finally the last straw for Nova, who tries to intervene and put a stop to Thanos' mayhem. Nova, being a younger superhero, he's bold enough to take a stab at Thanos himself. And don't get it twisted, Nova is actually quite a powerhouse, so readers might have expected him to at least make some kind of a dent on the Titan, but no, Thanos effortlessly stops Nova in his tracks and turns him into Lego pieces. And this is intentional, something that Thanos does to humiliate Nova. As he does what he does, he mutters, "like a child's toy blocks," mocking Nova's age and lack of experience. Brutal. And the list gets worse. At number 9, we have the time when Thanos knocks out Captain Marvel. This event takes place in the MCU when Carol Danvers tries to intercept Thanos' effort to use the Infinity Gauntlet. With her incredible strength, she almost succeeds at putting a stop to him, and he might even be concerned at this moment himself, because if any hero is going to swoop in and stop him at this very point, it would be Captain Marvel. I mean, she can destroy whole alien spaceships by simply flying through them with her body, among so many other things. But right as Thanos is about to lose, he reinstates his supremacy by yanking out the Power Stone and using it to power up a superpowered punch and basically knocking out Carol cold. This is a serious disrespect to Captain Marvel's power and integrity. She simply just isn't used to being punched out like this, but in this instance, Thanos is an exception. Okay, at number 8 is when Thanos totally embarrasses Atri by encasing his hands in metal. Unfortunately, what he does here goes quite beyond embarrassment and into tragedy, as he murders all of Nidavelir's people. Except for Atri, of course. Now I know Atri isn't a superhero, but it still is a kick in the shins to Thor and the rest of the team, quite directly actually. You see, Atri was supposed to craft Thor's hammer, which he was going to use to defeat Thanos, but instead, Thanos shows up early before the team can approach Atri with the job and has the dwarf craft the Infinity Gauntlet instead, and then he traps his hands in metal. Not only that, but he kills all the other dwarves, leaving only the one that mattered to him. This is clearly an effort to humiliate Thor and his teammates by sort of saying, "Look, I'm always going to be one step ahead of you guys, and even though I could have killed Atri as well, I decided to let him tell you how it all went down. Oh, and by the way, he's useless to you now as well because his hands are in metal."
Number 7. Luke Cage. Alright, we covered Luke Cage getting his butt handed to him the first time around, but I found a hilarious and much more subtle embarrassment dished out by Spidey. In New Avengers Volume 1, number 51, after Spider-Man revealed his identity to the Avengers, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage's wife, recognizes him because they went to high school together, and she had the biggest crush on Peter. Now, fast forward to issue number 53, Spider-Man and the New Avengers are floating in their Quinjet above New Orleans, looking for a place to land, when Spider-Man starts talking to Luke Cage about his wife apparently being in love with Spider-Man in high school, which he had no idea about, and while she's cute and all that, he believes in the statutes of marriage and the institutions, so Luke has nothing to worry about from him. But if him and Iron Fist broke up, then he'd like to get in on that action, you know? Luke just wants out as he calls Clint to land the damn plane already. Number 6. Firelord. Okay, look, he's not a hero. Well, he's hardly an anti-hero. In fact, he's kind of an anti-villain, but Firelord, the former Herald of Galactus and eventual member of the Nova Corps, came to Earth wanting to partake in all the great stuff we got going on here, only to be attacked by firefighters and eventually Spider-Man himself. And now, he wants revenge for the embarrassment. Look, he's not from here, okay? Just because he has different ideas of what's fair doesn't mean that he's evil, right? After Spidey leads the spicy Fire Lord on a chase all around New York, he decides to engage him hand to hand. And boy does he go off, dodging every swing against him with his spider sense and landing countless blows on the alien, leaving him unconscious when the Avengers show up to pull Spider-Man off of him. Number 5. Phoenix, Colossus, and Magic. A duo? And this duo? I know, it's crazy. In Avengers vs. X-Men number 9, a group of 5 X-Men were granted quite the power boost in the form of the Phoenix Force. The mutant siblings Colossus and Magic were 2 of these X-Men. Now, Spider-Man is physically no match for either one of these guys, not with the Phoenix Force. But Spider-Man isn't one to let something like that stop him. Even when beaten to a pulp, he still has that charming personality and beautiful brain. When one of the avatars for the Phoenix Force is defeated, the power of the remaining 4 gets boosted even more, and it's just these 2 left. And Spider-Man gives them a little innocent reminder of that fact. Now, we don't get to see the fight that takes place between the 2. Instead, we get to see the unconscious bodies of both of them, with Spider-Man still barely standing to let everyone know he got them to knock each other out. Number 4. Tony Stark and Reed Richards. I love when Spider-Man gets to show how smart he actually is. In Big Time The Amazing Spider-Man, the new Sinister Six has activated big boomies all over New York, and the Avengers are struggling with how to disarm and deactivate them in the 2 minutes and 28 seconds they have left. Reed Richards and Tony Stark, 2 of the smartest men on the whole planet, were going over options on how to disarm the thing. Freeze the thermal assembly? Nope. Use a sliver of vibranium? That won't do it. Spider-Man's got it. After taking a look at the clock, Peter runs over to the computer running the device and begins to sync up the timer with the system clock. Now, why the heck would he do that? Well, you see, it was the first Sunday in November, which means daylight savings time. Which means Peter just bought them an extra hour to get rid of the devices. Nice move, kid. Number 3. Clint Barton as Ronin. During Dark Reign, the Avengers were more of a covert rogue team. Their leaders were lost in civil war. Secret Invasion had put everyone against everyone, unsure of who was a Skrull and who wasn't, and now Norman Osborn was in charge of everything. The new Avengers know they've got to find some way of getting Norman. Clint Barton, who was Ronin at the time, tried a media smear campaign and it didn't really go too well. So now, he just wants him gone, and he suggests just that in New Avengers issue 55. Spider-Man word slaps the gathered Avengers into their senses. Peter steps out right in the face of the idea of delifing anyone. Am I the only one here who wants to, act heroic in the face of adversity? He goes on to say that now that they don't have their Tony Stark money or Avengers Mansion and butlers, that Ronin is cracking up under the weight of the real world. Yeah, tell him, Spidey. Yeah. Number 2. Nova. Look, comics back in the day weren't always written the best, okay? In Nova number 12, Richard Rider is trying to find the criminal who de-lifed his uncle, Ralph Rider, and he flies past Spider-Man doing battle with the criminal. Now, Nova has seen Spider-Man in the papers with wanted signs and articles saying that he's a crook. And if he's here, then Nova has gotta at least make sure he had nothing to do with Richard's uncle, right? Look, he was distraught, okay? This little scuffle doesn't really go Nova's way though. After he lands a kind of cheap shot on Spider-Man, he catches some webs to the visor, then a fist, and after he lifts Spidey into the air, he catches a nice pair of Spidey boots to the dome as well. And as with most embarrassing fights, Spidey is giving him an earful about the error of his ways in the most hilarious way possible. Number 1. The Avengers. This isn't so embarrassing in the direct sense. You see, when all the Avengers and the Fantastic Four were off in a pocket universe fighting the villain Onslaught, New York lost its main defenders. Spider-Man, by himself, stepped into the role of the Avengers. One guy filled the role of a whole team, defending New York from all supercrime, and keeping the people of New York in remembrance of the seemingly gone superheroes. You know what? It's just what Spider-Man would do. He would step up when things looked their bleakest and take the heavy weight of being solely responsible for defending the world. Now, yes, this was the clone of Peter Parker, Ben Reilly, but he holds the same morals and powers. And the man took on an invasion of Sentinels, so yeah, he is taking this one. There were other non-active Avengers on the Earth still, and while they were considering coming back as a team, Spider-Man just did it. Way to go. Number 10, Cyborg. In Injustice Gods Among Us number 15, Cyborg, Wonder Woman, and Superman go to Arkham Asylum to move its prisoners to Superman's quote-unquote secure facility. Cyborg takes control of the asylum security and begins opening cell doors for Flash to whisk away the prisoners inside. When he is about to open the Riddler's cell, Batman gives him a little warning not to, which Cyborg ignores. All it takes is one button on Batman's utility belt and Cyborg's systems go haywire. He falls to the ground, writhing in pain, until Nightwing steps in and presses the button again. It turns out that after Cyborg checks the date of the virus that caused this, Batman had uploaded the virus the very first day the two met, and he's had it the whole time. An easy little button press and he takes down an extremely advanced Cyborg. Number 9, Green Arrow. In the Deceased storyline, when an anti-life virus is spreading throughout the globe and infects Superman, Damian Wayne, the Batman at the time, gets access to Bruce's files around taking down the Justice League. The funniest and most embarrassing thing though is that when Green Arrow assumes there's a file with his name on it, Damian informs him that there isn't. Batman didn't have a single file for Green Arrow. He didn't even see Green Arrow as a real threat. Bruce is dishing out the embarrassments even beyond the grave. But Green Arrow could be a planetary threat if he wanted to. Wait a minute, you know what would be really embarrassing? If you didn't like and subscribe to our channel. Kidding, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. Do it. Do it. Do it. Number 8, the Hulk. Bet you didn't expect to see this on the list. Honestly, who would? I know who. Anyone who knows that Batman is Batman, that's who. In 1981's DC Special Series number 27, Batman comes upon the rampaging Green Rage monster. The Joker had tricked Hulk into believing Batman was an enemy. The Hulk ended up getting the Dark Knight in a bear hug, where he almost broke the Bat's back. Batman busts out of it and uses a knockout gas. But Hulk ain't that dumb, and he just holds his breath. Until Batman kicks him straight in the stomach, winding the Green Giant and causing him to breathe in. Yeah, it's probably unrealistic as hell, but it's a man that fights criminals in a bat suit fighting a guy that turns into a giant green monster because of gamma rays from a bomb. So tell me how that's realistic.
At number 7, we have the time when Thanos rips Vision's insides out. Now, Vision is basically the son of Ultron and a very powerful and influential counterpart to Thanos. His abilities are very extensive, allowing him to phase through matter with ease, for instance, and although he is able to phase through Thanos at first, catching him off guard and throwing him off balance, Thanos regains control of the situation. And in this fateful moment, he pulls Vision from inside his own body and holds him up by the throat. But that isn't it. He then uses the Infinity Gauntlet to reach inside the android's body and tear out all of his wiring, putting an end to his efforts for good. Okay, at number 6 is the time when Thanos kills Cyclops by suffocating him inside a clear box. This is a brutal end to Cyclops' legacy at the hands of Thanos. When the two of them are squaring off in a big battle along with the other X-Men, Cyclops has a moment where he gets the upper hand on Thanos, and as the leader of the X-Men, the reader is expecting at this point to possibly witness a victory at the hands of the good guys. Because it isn't often that we see someone as decorated and influential as Cyclops losing a fight, let alone losing his own life. But the reader doesn't get what they want here, as Thanos creates a small clear box around Cyclops' head, which seems to be impenetrable by his laser vision blasts. Not only that, but Cyclops quickly starts losing air and suffocating in the little clear box. As Captain America rushes over, he realizes that it's too late by the time he gets over to Cyclops, and he dies. As humiliating of a defeat as it is, embarrassment was probably the last thing on anyone's mind. I would assume, sadness and tragedy came first. Still pretty embarrassing now. Okay, at number 5 is the time in Avengers Infinity War when Thanos knocks out the Hulk almost effortlessly. And what makes this one extra humiliating is that Thanos doesn't even have all the Infinity Stones yet. Right around this scene, Thanos has just acquired the Space Stone, but it wouldn't seem to most that this would be enough to beat the Hulk as badly as he does. He seems to be toying with the big green behemoth for a while before deciding he's ready to take the victory. So he just simply knocks out the Hulk. And listen, it may be easy to lose track of power hierarchies in Infinity War given all the unimaginable power coming from the Infinity Stones, as well as all the different superheroes and supervillains who come and go. But we can't forget that the Hulk is still a serious force that the Avengers themselves have had a very hard time containing in the past. So for Thanos to just toss him aside like this is definitely a major display of supreme power, and maybe a little embarrassing. as well. At number 4 is when Thanos turns Wolverine's skeleton into rubber, basically. The image is too much to bear as we see Wolverine's body fall to the ground like an empty gym bag. And this comes right after Wolverine gets a big shot in on Thanos. During the onslaught to take down the Titan, Wolverine actually manages to stick his claws into Thanos' back. Silver Surfer even thinks this is the killing blow as they watch in anticipation, but much to everyone's surprise, or are they even surprised anymore? Thanos shrugs off the attack and jellifies Wolverine's otherwise indestructible adamantium skeleton. This moment is pivotal in the development of both Thanos and Wolverine's characters, considering it shows Thanos' sheer raw power and, on the other hand, totally diminishes Wolverine's long-hyped strength that seems to be near its peak during the Infinity War. I mean, who hasn't thought about how strong adamantium is and how much it'd take for somebody to get the upper hand on Wolverine? And then just to see him lying on the ground like that, still conscious but totally useless, it's too much. Next slide. At number 3 is when Thanos totally thwarts Quasar's attacks and turns him into ash with little to no effort. So in this same battle during the Infinity War, which makes up most of this list it seems, Quasar takes a shot at Thanos himself. When things are looking grim for the Allies, Quasar is called upon by Adam Warlock to support in the fight against Thanos. And Quasar comes at him with all the confidence and bravado that he's usually known for. And for good reason too, because after all, he is the one carrying the quantum bands, which have basically immeasurable power. So in this final chance to avenge Spider-Man, Thor, and Wolverine, among so many others, Quasar appears to be the one who can pull out a heroic win for the good guys. But once again, our hopes are all dashed as Thanos just explodes the quantum bands, rendering Quasar totally useless. As he falls to his knees defeated, Thanos simply blasts him with a good old beam of power and turns him into ash. Does anyone think this list is starting to sound more and more like that compilation in The Incredibles where we see all those heroes die because of their capes? It's just like pure confidence, absolutely annihilated by Thanos' might, and always in such an embarrassing way. At number 2 is when Thor is turned into glass and then shattered. This is a devastating defeat since Thor appears to be the Allies' last hope in defeating the newly godlike Thanos. After a harrowing battle where Thor even loses his hammer for a time and then nearly suffocates in space, it's finally down to a showdown between arguably the two most powerful forces on this battlefield. But as Thor is approaching Thanos with the energy as though he's gonna deliver the final blow, Thanos simply turns him into glass, and then without hesitation proceeds to smash the Thor statue into a million pieces. This obviously takes the God of Thunder out of the fight and basically out of reality. Such a build-up suggests a much more intricate and balanced face-off would occur, but even after all the preparation and anticipation, Thanos still proves that he's no one to be messed with, even by the God of Thunder. Pretty embarrassing if you ask me. You know, you gotta feel for the guy, or the millions of little pieces of the guy that's left. At number 1 is the time when Thanos breaks Captain America's neck with a backhanded slap to the face. This is by far one of the most humiliating defeats on the list, both because of the status and build-up of Captain America's character, and also the fact that it's basically just a slap that takes Cap out of commission. During what appears to be a final epic confrontation between Captain America and Thanos, Cap is throwing some epic monologues at the godly purple alien like, "As long as one man stands against you, you will never claim victory." But as this is going down, Thanos almost entirely misses the fact that Silver Surfer is flying towards him with the intention of snatching the Infinity Gauntlet off of his hand. And he almost does too. But Thanos, of course, becomes aware of it at the last moment, and in his rage and possibly in a state of his own little bit of embarrassment, he turns and smacks Captain America in the face with a backhanded slap, breaking the hero's neck and killing him. It seems like a theme in these final encounters after Thanos retrieves all the Infinity Stones that he almost gets beaten, but then totally snaps back and shows the heroes who's boss. Snaps back. Get it? Snaps? I didn't even notice that until I said it. At number 10, we have the time when the Flash accidentally kills Reverse Flash by breaking his neck. This incident takes place in the Flash number 79 when Reverse Flash seems to be back to mess with Barry Allen's life again. Their beef starts when Reverse Flash kills the love of Barry's life, Iris West, and sends the Flash into a depression, naturally. But when Barry finally moves on and is set to marry Fiona Webb, Reverse Flash shows up again and tries to kill his new fiancée. So what does Barry Allen do? He swoops in and grabs Reverse Flash in a chokehold while he's in motion, thus snapping his neck and killing him right there and then. Which is pretty embarrassing considering Barry basically just uses Reverse Flash's own momentum to kill him. But following this event, the whole city catches wind of what happens and actually turns on Barry for some reason. I do not understand this. Reverse Flash kept showing up to kill his wives. At a certain point, you have to take that guy out for good. They even put him on trial and convict him, causing the Flash to pack up and move to a different reality, which is like the superhero equivalent of moving to a new town, I guess. Number 9 is a fun one. This one is about Kid Flash and the time that he actually throws none other than Superboy Prime for a loop by running around him in a flurry and even landing a few punches on him. What makes this super embarrassing is that Superboy Prime is trying to have a serious revelation about where the Flash has gone and what Kid Flash is doing in his place. There's been some kind of break in the timeline at this point, and Superboy Prime thinks that the Flash has been killed. And as this epic realization moment is supposed to be happening, Kid Flash is ducking and dodging around Superboy's blasts and just being straight up goofy about the whole situation. So not only does the Flash seem to cheat death here, but his youthful replacement is just absolutely toying with this hyper powerful villain and not even breaking a sweat. This moment serves a helpful purpose as well because the rest of the team is able to focus on their objectives while Superboy Prime is distracted. And on top of everything, Kid Flash ends up having a full-on reunion with his friend, totally ignoring Superboy Prime. This isn't something such a powerful villain is used to, being taken for a fool like this. I just feel like it belongs on the list. At number 8 is a pretty cruel one. In The Flash number 200, Wally West basically forces Zoom to relive the most traumatic day of his life on a loop for eternity. But once again, this is the result of Zoom attacking his wife Linda and effectively ending the life of the baby in her womb. Okay, what's the deal with everyone going after the Flash's wives? Honestly, this is a pretty hardcore punishment for Zoom and might even go further than embarrassment in its effect, but he sort of had it coming. I mean, if Wally wanted to, he could have probably just killed him once he caught him, but instead he decides he's gonna let the guy think about what he's done for the rest of eternity while living out the worst thing he's ever experienced. A villain like Zoom isn't used to facing punishment like this very often, but trying to take things as far as he did does have its consequences, even at the hands of an otherwise kind and forgiving superhero like the Flash. Don't mess with the fam, people, come on. He's the fastest dude in the cosmos.
Number 7. Green Lantern. First off, Justice League War is an awesome animated DC movie. We see the Justice League come together for the first time. And one of the first interactions between Green Lantern and Batman in a sewer, there's a bit of banter between Hal and Bruce when Hal realizes that Batman is literally just some guy in a bat costume. And he asks, "What, no one asked you to prom, so now you just dress as a bat and prowl around your parents' basement?" Batman, in response, simply just pauses and then asks, "What's this do?" as he holds up the Green Lantern's ring. It makes me genuinely chuckle. But then, when Green Lantern tries to tell him that he won't be able to do that again, Batman just hits him with, "Unless I want to." What a boss. Number 6. Green Lantern again. In All-Star Batman and Robin, the Boy Wonder, Green Lantern gets shown up. In order to face Hal Jordan, Batman lures him into a room where he has painted literally everything yellow. Why? The Green Lantern ring has the unfortunate weakness of not being able to affect anything yellow. So all the furniture, his and Robin's costumes, even their faces, and to top it all off, he even taunts Green Lantern while drinking lemonade. To really top it off, Batman isn't even the one to fight the Lantern. He leaves that to his ward, Robin, who admittedly takes it a bit too far. Number 5. Okay, one last Green Lantern defeat. Now, before you jump on me for including 3 times he's embarrassed the Green Lantern, you should know that 1, I don't even like Green Lantern that much, and 2, this time it was Guy Gardner, who is arguably the most annoying one. In 1987's Justice League number 5, or Justice League International number 5, Guy Gardner is his usual cocky, jerkish self. And a conflict between him and Batman has been brewing for a few issues, with Guy just kind of being a huge pain in the butt. But when Guy finally rears back to throw his punch, the Dark Knight is in there so fast, punching this guy so hard he knocks him clean out. And then him and the rest of the league leave him on the floor while they continue planning and even go on missions. Then, He doesn't even come to until like 2 issues later, when he just accidentally knocks himself back out. Number 4. Punisher. Punisher/Batman Deadly Nights is a very short-lived confrontation between these two heroes occurs when Batman stops Punisher from killing the Joker, which, as we know, goes against Batman's ideology. He interrupts the Punisher, coming in between him and his gun, and telling the Joker to run. In his frustration, Punisher drops his pistol and gets one mean punch in across Batman's face. Just the one though, as Batman lets him know he will only allow that one. Seeing how the Punisher probably thinks Bruce deserves it. It really gets embarrassing when Mr. Castle goes for a second swing and Batman redirects the punch in one move, sending the Punisher face first into a pile of boxes stacked up against a brick wall. When Batman tells you you only get one, you best believe him. Number 3. Justice Buster Armor. In the endgame story, the Joker has twisted the other members of the Justice League with his Joker toxin, meaning we get to see Batman take them all on. While we know he has contingencies for each member of the League, Batman instead dons an armor that has the capability to subdue every member of the Justice League, the Justice Buster. Using this suit, he puts Wonder Woman in a dream state, maps out the Flash's movements, and causes him to slip and crash into a building, knocking him out. He fires a foam made up of magnesium carbonate at Aquaman that envelops him and drains him of the moisture in his body the more he struggles. And then Superman shows up. The Justice Buster has plasma shields to deflect I-beams, thrusters and thermals to deter frost breath, but this is a Superman that isn't pulling his punches. When Superman gets through this armor, it doesn't matter though. Batman spits a polymer laced with green kryptonite dust into Superman's eyes, rendering him powerless. Number 2. Beating Superman as an old man. In the exceedingly famous Dark Knight Returns story, we see what is arguably one of the best Superman vs. Batman fights to ever grace comics. In the last issue, number 4, pits an aged Bruce Wayne against a Superman that has become a puppet of the government. Superman has been weakened by a nuclear explosion. He's been hit by hunter missiles, shot from a tank, shot with a sonic gun that makes his nose bleed. Batman uses every watt of the city's power to electrocute Superman's brain. Batman then socks Superman straight across the face a few times, shoots acid in his face, and after being hit with a green kryptonite arrow, Superman takes a studded boot to the jaw before Batman seemingly dies of a heart attack. Even at 55, he left Superman battered and bleeding, and the whole thing was just a ruse. Well played. Number 1. He put all the other heroes to shame. Of all the insanely powered heroes in the DC universe, Batman is the last person you or I think could pose a threat to Darkseid. So it's kind of embarrassing for every other hero that has lost to Darkseid when in the Final Crisis event, Bruce Wayne simply shoots Darkseid with a radion bullet, killing him, just like that. Yeah, he had the element of surprise because not a single soul thought he could pull off anything like that. Not even Superman could defeat Darkseid here. What makes it better is that it's not the only time he has beaten the God of Death. That's why you don't underestimate Batman, y'all. Number 10. Lex Luthor. Imagine your long-distance son, who you were finally gaining ground with, is killed by a giant 7-foot clone of himself. And then his psycho grandpa steals his body and puts it in a sarcophagus alongside a chaos crystal, which leads to the villains from Apocalypse coming and fighting you for it. Now, imagine your friends show up and start intervening, unintentionally blocking you from stopping the villains from stealing your son's body. How absolutely fuming might you be? That's kinda hard to imagine, isn't it? Well, basically, after the Shazam and Justice League aligned Lex Luthor tried justifying this, Batman lets both of them know why they should keep their mouths shut and not insert themselves into conflicts they know nothing about. Batman gets 3 good punches across Shazam's face, leaving him shocked and embarrassed, and then knocks Lex Luthor on his butt with a nice stiff punch, hurting his ego and his face. Number 9. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. As with almost all comics that take heroes from 2 different universes and throw them together, those heroes have to fight at least a little bit before they can join forces. It's just tradition at this point. So, of course, in 2016, when we see Batman team up with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a little scuffle has to take place. Oh, also, if you thought this kind of team up would be silly, yeah, maybe. But it's totally awesome. In their scuffle in the 2nd issue of the comic, Batman basically makes them look like amateurs. They end up hitting each other, being stunned by the Batmobile, having their weapons taken and used against them. Michelangelo starts to get some kind of conversation going before Splinter shows up and splinters the fight. It is super cool, and so is this comic. Give it a read. Cowabunga, dude. Hey there, nerds. Did you know that every time you hit that like and subscribe button, my appreciation of you grows by 4? For what? I don't know. I just work here. Anyways, keep whacking those buttons for more spicy content. Number 8, Nightwing. You know, I think Batman needs to kind of ease up on just punching people instead of talking. Sure, it gets stuff done, but then you end up crying at the Oscars while accepting your Best Actor award, so... When Batman first comes into contact with the Court of Owls, the members have special seals hidden in their mouths. The first Robin, now going by Nightwing, could possibly be one of them, as his great-grandfather is. So, how does Batman figure out if his old partner, longtime friend, and member of the Bat family is still loyal? Well, after a bit of lip from Dick Grayson, Batman punches Nightwing right in the mouth and knocks out his tooth to check. He was supposed to be a Talon of the Court of Owls, but he clearly isn't. Remind me never to become a Robin, okay?
At number 7 is the time when, in the early days of The Flash, he basically gloats over the dead body of a villain he's just driven off the road. Something about the old-timey era of superheroes makes moments like this so much more bizarre, because it seems like the writers haven't quite yet gotten the hang of the characters. Like, I don't think this is something The Flash would ever do again after this instance, but it's definitely a humiliating way to treat this enemy. In this scene here, this bad guy named Satan, totally unrelated to the fallen angel, goes flying off a cliff in a car and explodes in the wreckage on the ground below. And of course, the Flash is already there to watch it all go down. He just sort of stands over him with his hands on his hips and says, "I'm on hand just to see your finish, Satan. Thus ends the threat of the Faultless Four." Considering that superheroes are known to have more forgiving moral compasses, this is a pretty dark and humiliating end for this Satan guy. And he didn't even try to hurt the Flash's family or anything. Damn. Okay, at number 6 is the time when the Flash basically drives the Top completely insane. In issue number 215, during the event Identity Crisis, the Flash finally captures the Top and has Zatanna mind-wipe him, turning him into a good guy. A once menacing and threatening villain, the Top is reduced to tears by the Flash after he is then forced to relive all his past evil deeds. And the Flash just sort of lets it happen. The Top becomes basically totally destroyed on the inside with guilt, facing his demons all at once as the Flash watches on. And tragically, the Top basically ends things for himself after everything is said and done. But the Flash doesn't seem to feel badly about it at all. He even refers to it as a kind of experiment and something he might try and do again. When I read that, I was like, whoa, Flash, chill out, dude. I think you got him. You definitely defeated the Top. You can just relax now. No need to try that out on anyone else. It's hard to watch, you know? What happened to putting people in jail and stuff? Alright, at number 5 is the time when the Flash kills Gorilla Grodd with a little sticky bomb. This is yet another savage moment for the Flash, or I suppose this is actually Scarlet Speedster, but he's filling in the role for the Flash, so it counts. During the Flash Annual number 3, the Scarlet Speedster is going back in time to correct some past evil deeds. You know, as he does. And on the way through time, he decides to take a quick stop at Grodd's lair. And while they duke it out for a while, the Flash decides that he's gonna take the gorilla out for good this time. So as he gets the better of Grodd, he plants a tiny sticky bomb on the ape and runs out of harm's way to basically watch the monkey go boom boom. As he's standing off to the side, his plan takes effect and the ape gets blown to smithereens right in front of him. What's humiliating about this moment is that Gorilla Grodd is just minding his own business before the Speedster shows up and decides it's the end of the road for him. And as he's trying to disarm the bomb, or at least rip it off his skin, Grodd's fingers are just too big to get a hold of the tiny bomb. It's sort of a sad moment, really. But definitely pretty embarrassing for a villain that otherwise poses a decent threat in the previous storylines. Okay, at number 4, we have the time when Barry Allen, aka The Flash, of course this is a Flash list, breaks a tie on a vote for whether or not to wipe Dr. Light's mind. The rest of the Justice League is torn on the severity of the punishment for Dr. Light's assault of Sue Dibney, but the Flash, once again choosing to be a savage that day, decides he'll allow it to go forth, and turns Dr. Light into a shell of his former self, completely without identity and basically rendered useless. And Dr. Light is normally a super threatening bad guy, so this isn't a position that he's used to being in, you know, totally stripped of everything he's ever known like that, and it's all at the hands of the Flash. This dude can be a real monster sometimes, eh? Even when Batman finds out this happens, he's like, what the hell? And sort of confronts the Flash, who then, get this, mind wipes him too. I think this list is perfect for the Flash because he just seems to like doing business this way every once in a while. Alright, at number 3 we have the time when the Flash turns Inertia into a living statue and then puts him in a museum. This is a pretty brutal punishment once again, and definitely something Inertia is not expecting. I mean, who thinks they're going to be overpowered on this level? After Kid Flash grows up, he takes over the moniker of Scarlet Speedster, filling in the role of the Flash while the mantle is basically unclaimed at the time. But he's eventually killed by Inertia, which is a pretty sad outcome for Kid Flash. And when Wally West returns as the Flash, he hunts down Inertia and confronts him about this incident. But Inertia doesn't seem sorry at all. And this is when Wally West goes beast mode and freezes Inertia as a sentient statue and puts him in the Flash Museum. And remember, Inertia is still alive in there, taking everything in and very aware that they're probably going to be stuck as a statue forever. Visitors will come by and look at Inertia as part of a villain's exhibit, read the little plaque about him, go, oh, interesting, look, one point this guy was a pretty powerful villain. Look, his Latin name is Inerticus Godondicus. And you'll never be able to wreak havoc ever again. How humiliating. And honestly, sort of fair, all things considered. Okay, at number 2, we have the time that the Flash actually runs himself back to life. This is a feat that absolutely astounds Black Racer, who is basically a conduit of death, chasing the Flash to snuff him out for good. But the Flash runs into an issue, in that he will eventually run out of stamina if he keeps running for his life. So, what he decides to do is run so far into the future that he reaches the end of the universe. And what happens when they reach the end of the universe? Well, Black Racer can't go on any further, of course. And he sure doesn't expect this. Although I don't know why anyone could expect it, because if Black Racer can't go beyond the end of the universe, why can Barry? This question is hotly contested online and basically comes down to the explanation that Barry reaches the end of the universe before Black Racer can, basically causing death to cease to exist. So he doesn't just humiliate Black Racer, he humiliates Death, its creator. Death needed to create Black Racer, so Speedster couldn't outrun Death anymore, and for the Flash to simply thwart that plan by doing something as risky and badass as running to the end of the universe, it's just crazy, and it belongs on the list. Finally, at number 1 is the time when the Flash single-handedly destroys Anti-Monitor's antimatter machine. Although he knows it'll mean his death, the Flash takes on a machine that will otherwise kill everyone he's ever loved, and let Anti-Monitor take his final victory over humanity. So he does what he does best and runs really fast, encircling the machine and breaking apart its outer casing, blowing up some henchmen in the process. This basically renders the machine useless, and Anti-Monitor knows it. He doesn't even hide his panic either, as he screams out that the Flash is behind all this and that his whole plan is foiled. Such a huge enemy like Anti-Monitor getting taken out by one single tiny superhero is a pretty embarrassing situation, and it sort of proves that Anti-Monitor is totally underestimating the Flash and humanity itself. I mean, he even says it himself, 1,000 universes and more have died because of me. Yet those humans have thwarted my plans, and more than once. Then he flips out. I don't think this is a regular occurrence for such a powerful evil force, and it's all because of the selflessness and bravery of the Flash, letting himself die just to show up the Anti-Monitor one last time. I'm just picturing Anti-Monitor sitting at his desk reworking his plans after this goes down, like, oh man, okay, antimatter machine, no go, tried that, but failed. Man, maybe I've just lost my touch. Maybe I should find a nice universe where I can retire. Maybe I should just relax for a bit. How was that Anti-Monitor impression? Is that how you think he talks?
Number 10, Peter Parker. Hey, we didn't say which Spider-Man was doing the embarrassing here. Peter Parker and Miles Morales met for the first time when Peter was teleported to Miles' universe. Now, I don't know why Peter's first decision was to attack Mr. Morales. He's had clones of himself before, and he's also been to other alternate universes, but hey, that's what he did. And it was 110% a mistake. As fans of Miles know, he is extremely capable. And he also has a unique Spider-Man power set. He used his Venom sting to paralyze Peter while jumping over him. He then went invisible and got Peter with a sneak attack kick to the face. It doesn't stop there though. After Peter demasked Miles, he got a nice electric shock that knocked him out cold. For an 11-year-old kid, Miles gave the experienced Peter Parker quite the beating. Number 9. Winter Soldier and Falcon. For a young lad, Peter Parker seems to overpower a lot of people. In his introduction to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Peter just shows us, and two of Captain America's best pals, that he ain't someone to mess with. During their fight, he overpowered the super soldier, even using his metal arms against him, disables and webs up Falcon, and redirects a huge chunk of metal flung at him by the Winter Soldier, all while quipping in the best ways possible. It was honestly so awesome to see when it first happened. He leaves them laying on the ground exhausted and webbed up. Not only an embarrassment for the two veteran soldiers and heroes, but a really fitting and hilarious introduction for the character to the MCU. Number 8. Luke Cage. A lot of the time, when a new hero is introduced into a comic book world, a fight between the misunderstood hero and another has to take place. That is exactly what happened when Luke Cage came on the scene. Luke Cage, the hero for hire, showed up in the Amazing Spider-Man number 123, hired by J. Jonah Jameson to capture Spider-Man for the death of Norman Osborn. Luke Cage ain't a guy you should underestimate by any means. Super strength and stamina, bulletproof skin, and a healing factor. But it's Spider-Man. Luke tackles Spider-Man off a roof and gets a few punches in. But Spider-Man kicked him off of another roof, teased him about basically being a mercenary, slammed him through a brick wall, got several fists to the face in, used Luke's own weight against him, and punched him through a skylight. They come to blows later on in the comic with pretty much the same outcome, causing Luke Cage to quit this one particular job. Go Web! Fly! Up away Web! Shazam! Go Web go! 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 Go Web go! Oh wait, that's not my power. No, my power is to make YouTube videos for you guys. Do you know what gives me this power? You liking and subscribing to the channel. And you are doing an absolutely stunning job. Keep it up. And don't forget to check out our Facebook for more content. Number 7. Green Arrow. Green Arrow and Batman have had a few scuffles before, and on the last list, we learned he isn't even considered a threat by Batman really. Things kinda get taken to another level though, in Superman Batman issue 14 in 2005, Pretenders to the Throne. Batman and Superman have become villains and rule over the country. Batman brings Superman to Green Arrow as a sick, twisted birthday present so they can pummel him together. Green Lantern actually gets Supes with a kryptonite arrow, which seems to only make Batman more angry, and after a hit with the bow, he completely lays into Green Arrow. That is, until Superman completely disintegrates him with his heat vision. Yikes. You know, maybe this is more sadistic than embarrassing. Number 6. Spawn. In 1994, Spawn was a powerhouse of money making. Now take that character and stick him in a comic with arguably one of the most popular characters ever, Batman, and you've got an instant success. While it may have been over the top ridiculously violent, it's still an awesome comic. As we said before, any team up has to have a little scuffle between the two main heroes, and this was one hell of a scuffle. It was brutal and violent. While it may have ended in a draw, during the fight, Batman actually ended up stabbing Spawn in the face with a batarang. The scar from this attack made its way into mainline Spawn comics, while Batman walked away without as much as a scratch. Fight Batman, and he'll give you a scar even your fans have to remember.
Halfway through into number 5, Darkseid. Bruce Wayne was at first not really taken seriously by Darkseid. As a matter of fact, Batman uses the element of being underestimated as like his greatest superpower basically. Batman doesn't kill, but he was forced to kill when Darkseid threatened Earth. The only known substance that could kill a new god is radion, so Batman shot Darkseid with a radion bullet and caused himself to die in the process. Darkseid, for that matter, had Batman as the last person in mind that could actually stop him. He thought if anybody was going to kill him, it would be Clark Kent, so yeah. Up until this point, the only human or sentient being, for that matter, that has truly made Darkseid, the god of evil in the DC universe, cower and run away is Batman. In it for Reverse Flash. A pride point for basically all speedsters, especially evil speedsters, is how fast they can move, how they're faster than a speeding bullet, and how they're basically impossible to hit. So imagine our surprise when Reverse Flash ends up getting popped in the head by none other than Thomas Wayne in the Flashpoint timeline, so that Barry Allen could access enough speed force to save the world and bring his son back. And while this apparently killed Thawne, that was far from it. Thawne actually started vibrating as fast as he could to slow the destruction of his brain. This actually gave Thawne more time to try and avoid death, or to try and find a way to do so, and gave him the ability to hold quite the grudge. Humiliated by getting killed by Batman of all people, Thawne sets out to be even worse than usual, even ripping up the letter that Thomas Wayne gave to Barry to give to Bruce, the only contact that Bruce has had with his parents since they died. The only contact with a living version, which is absolutely brutal. Batman was like ugly crying, and ooh, it was not pretty. Getting close to the end into number 3, The Riddler. Batman Universe is an absolute gem of a comic. The series spotlights Batman in a time-traveling, universe-spanning adventure that takes him all the way from present-day Gotham to Thanagar, then back in time to the Wild West, where he meets Jonah Hex, and then all the way back to the present again. This series starts off somewhat innocuously, however. It's kind of simple, with a confrontation with the Riddler. Only Batman can tell that something isn't quite right. The Riddler's riddle this time was simply, when is the Riddler not the Riddler? And both the Dark Knight and Alfred agree that this is way below Nigma's usual standard. After chasing Riddler down and asking why he's stolen a priceless Fabergé egg, Batman also expresses concern at Nigma's behavior. It comes off as sincere concern, but there's an element of condescension in there as well, about how Riddler just isn't riddling like he used to, and honestly, he's trash at the moment, basically. And it's even more obvious that this is kind of Batman's tone when Green Arrow shows up and Batman literally says, "You're embarrassing yourself in front of Green Arrow. Are you feeling alright?" Which is kind of a dig at both Nigma and Oliver. Penultimately, in at number 2, the Justice League. The Justice Buster Batsuit is a mech suit part of Batman's Fenrir contingency, designed to take down the entirety of the Justice League, making its feature appearance in Batman Endgame when the Joker used his virus to warp the brains of the Justice League as the beginning of his Endgame plot. Batman was forced to use the Fenrir Protocol to eliminate his teammates. The suit was successful in eliminating Wonder Woman, the Flash, and Aquaman, but met an even match at the hands of Superman. After a lengthy fight, Superman tore through the armor and nearly killed Batman until Bruce used kryptonite chewing gum and spit it in Clark's face, rendering him unconscious. Come on! Like, imagine waking up to learn that you passed out because Batman spit on your face. Like, seriously, bro, please brush your tongue when you brush your teeth. Your breath is absolutely lethal. Not to mention the miniaturized red suns for Knuckles, ancient Greek supernatural weaponry, super fast servers, and electromagnetic nerve trees for a sensor array that are also in the suit. And finally, in at number 1, the Joker. Mad Love is one of the most beloved episodes of Batman the Animated Series, but the story of the episode was first told in the show's tie-in comic, The Batman Adventures. The story provides an in-depth look into Harley Quinn's origin and the full extent of her abusive relationship with the Joker. After her anniversary plans end with her being thrown out of a window by Mr. J, she decides that the only way to win her Puddin's affection is to capture and kill Batman. And she succeeds, well, at capturing. But Joker isn't happy about that. If anyone's gonna take Batman down, it's going to be him. And he lashes out at Harley once again, leaving him alone with the Dark Knight. Batman and Joker then fight, obviously, but Batman's able to use Harley's successful scheme to his advantage, taunting the Joker that she came closer than he ever has to actually killing him, and concluding this joke by calling him Puddin', which is one of the funniest things I think Batman has ever done. Being usually a brooding and dark hero who still refuses to kill despite his darkness, calling his greatest enemy by his girlfriend's pet name is one of the best moments for Batman.
Number 10. First appearance, first defeat. During his very first appearance, Vulture ended up being defeated. He first appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man issue number 2 and ended that first story he appeared in during the first half of the comic, of course, in prison. Vulture here manages to catch Spider-Man unawares the first time they meet and even kinda captures him. However, Spider-Man escapes and later outsmarts Vulture, realizing that he relies on his wing gadgetry to soar and really has no powers of his own and is just kind of an old guy. Spider-Man creates a device which disables Vulture's wings. Next time the two encounter one another, he uses it during the fight and handily defeats Vulture just like that, clipping the old man's wings and leaving that bird to be caged. Sorry, Adrian. Number 9. Spotter needed. When it comes to Miles Morales' first trip out as Spider-Man, it was embarrassing for both Miles and the first villain he encountered on patrol, Kangaroo. Miles was wearing a Spider-Man costume after Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker, had died, and a lot of onlookers felt that this costume was in bad taste because of this. Miles also struggled somewhat with this instigation. He was just kind of getting the hang of his powers. But he got the final punch in his fight against Kangaroo, who had hoisted a car car over his head and was about to throw it at Miles. Miles' punch to Kangaroo's chest causes him to drop the car on his own head, making him kinda knock himself out. How embarrassing. Don't worry, Miles does kick him away to safety, so at least he doesn't get crushed by that car. You should always be careful when lifting heavy objects. Case in point. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you love when villains get embarrassed, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Inferior Superior. One of the most embarrassing defeats for Otto Octavius around has to be when Spider-Man's heroism and Otto's kinda lack thereof made him realize that despite being called Superior Spider-Man, Otto, who was in Peter Parker's body at the time, was not actually capable of saving the day here. He needed Peter's help. This caused Otto to relinquish the body he stole back to Peter Parker, who still had a remaining consciousness left within it. Surrendering, Otto would later show back up in a clone of Peter's body, but would eventually go back to being the regular old Doc Ock in the end. Stick to what you're best at, maybe, is the moral here. Although I won't lie, I did enjoy watching Superior Spider-Man thwip around the city, beating baddies in Spider-Man's place. There were some things he was pretty good at, but this just wasn't one of them. It was a neat time in the comics. Number 7. Rejected. We've seen this tactic used a few times to beat Venom. Initially, Spider-Man was the one whom the Venom symbiote wanted the most. Spider-Man was initially depicted as the first host and has been the symbiote's first host in a few different versions of the tale. Although in the comics, Venom now has like a whole back history like before Spider-Man, so yeah. That is a thing that happened. In the Spectacular Spider-Man animated show, the fact that Peter is the first host remains to be the true narrative, as well as in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, or the Raimiverse as well, actually. In the Spectacular Spider-Man animated show, it's this connection to Spider-Man that Peter uses in order to defeat the symbiote. He creates a rift between Eddie and the Venom symbiote by offering himself to be the symbiote's host, suggesting that the Venom symbiote, never really wanted to be with Eddie and that he was basically kinda like a rebound for them. When the Venom symbiote decides to leave Eddie, this is seemingly confirmed, hurting their relationship. After bonding to Peter, they also learn that Peter was lying and didn't actually want to be with them. And while trying to make Peter be their one and only, he ends up being protected by the memories and mental manifestations of those he loves within his consciousness. You can't make someone love you. Sorry, Venom. You can try, but it's not gonna work.
At number 6 is the time when Iron Man unhinges a plan set by the Raxon Corporation when they detonate a deposit of vibranium to try and destroy a fleet of battleships. Basically, going back, it starts with a battle between Iron Man and Namor, which is interrupted by the realization that Raxon is trying to gain control of a whole island due to a deposit of the highly valuable metal vibranium mentioned earlier. When a group of battleships close in to prevent this from taking place, the corrupt corporation decides to detonate the vibranium so that no one can have it. And it seems to be part of the plan to destroy these battleships in the process. But what does Iron Man do? He decides he wants to control the narrative and physically tows the 5 battleships away from the explosion. This makes it so Raxon just destroys the vibranium for no reason. And Iron Man does this with one of his old armors too. He can't help but show everyone that he has the strength to change everyone's plan at any given time and leave them in the dust wondering what happened. At number 5, we've got the time Iron Man shields up right as the Hulk is about to hit him with a huge missile. It seems that at this point in the storyline, the Hulk feels that he's been betrayed by Iron Man, so he's very angry, as usual, and decides to abandon reason and use force instead, as usual. What's brutal about this event isn't just that the Hulk is basically one-shotted by the explosion, but also that Iron Man first rubs it in by schooling the Hulk on the make and design of the missile. He identifies it as his own technology and notices leakage that threatens an explosion that would send them both to Mars and back. So he activates a super powerful shield which protects him from the blast. And those visuals are just ridiculous, seeing the Hulk getting vaporized by the explosion as Iron Man's safe and sound in his little bubble. Not what the Hulk was expecting. Maybe it's time for that dude to start thinking before he acts, especially when he's in the presence of one of the best. Okay, at number 4 is the time when Iron Man fractures the Phoenix Force with his Phoenix Buster armor. Now, I'm not sure if the Phoenix Force can physically feel anything, let alone embarrassment, considering it's a cosmic entity powerful enough to shatter whole worlds like glass, but if it could, its face would be red and hot after Iron Man absolutely wrecks Phoenix Force, forcing it to split up into 5 pieces. And the Phoenix Force isn't the only one who should be feeling the burn from this huge win win by Iron Man. Thor even fails to take down Phoenix Force with his hammer right before Tony succeeds at it. So Iron Man is just showing everyone up in this event. And this is a huge event that had been building up for a while. Phoenix Force had been posing a huge threat to the X-Men and the Avengers in this storyline. So Iron Man just showing up and blowing it up into a bunch of pieces is pretty humiliating for such a powerful being. I just like to picture Phoenix Force getting all geared up about taking out all these superheroes and then their plans having to change entirely after a little human in his own little armor appears to stop them in their tracks. It's just, yikes, wrecked. Which brings us to number 3, when Iron Man totally humiliates this fleet of guys wearing power suits that they think could combat his own. With their suits having the same firepower as some small countries, they expect there's no way Tony Stark could match up against them. In fact, Tony is even wearing his classic armor, which isn't quite as powerful as his updated suit, so they even have a better chance than usual to even the score. And still, they're made to look like fools as Iron Man easily evades their heat-seeking missiles and diverts them to actually backfire and destroy the armored assailants themselves. It's just an absolute joke watching him face off against these guys, carrying them around like they're action figures and throwing insults at them, and they seem so confident. That's what kills me about this list, is how confident all these villains are before Iron Man shows them who's boss. It just makes the wins all more embarrassing when they come. Okay, nearing the top of our list at number 2, we have the iconic face-off between Iron Man and Captain America. During the Civil War conflict, the Avengers are split into 2 different factions, one side being led by Captain America, the other by Iron Man. And as tensions escalate on either side, it finally culminates to a big battle between the 2 sides, and of course between Iron Man and Captain America themselves. But like everyone else on this list, Captain America somehow underestimates Tony Stark when he tries to pull a fast one on him and disable his armor. After what seems like a conciliatory handshake between Iron Man and Captain America, Tony notices a small electron scrambler device on his hand, leaving him open to a blow by Cap's shield right to the face. But as Iron Man is laying on the ground, petrified, he simply reboots his armor and gets back up. I don't think Captain America expects this either, because Iron Man flies at him and after an effortless fist fight, knocks him to the ground, almost severing his jaw with one massive punch in the face. This is high up on the list because Captain America is a very skilled strategist, and watching him get shown up so hard like this has to be pretty humiliating, especially in front of all his peers like that. Oof. At number 1, it is the face-off that Iron Man has against Magneto during the Avengers vs. X-Men storyline. This event takes the top of the list because of the irony. Get it? Iron-y? The irony of this particular face-off, given that Magneto manipulates metal and Iron Man is made of it. Fans had been anticipating this face-off for some time, so when it came, everyone expected Magneto to take the W. And that includes Magneto himself. But in classic ingenious Iron Man fashion, Tony Stark shows up to the fight with a special non-metal armor made out of nanotubes, stealing this huge advantage from Magneto. But that's not where it ends. Iron Man then harnesses the power of Jupiter's magnetic field to power up his armor and take down the magnetic supervillain. And while Magneto is coming back for one final attempt, he's distracted by Phoenix Force, giving Iron Man the chance to knock him out properly this time. This is a huge embarrassment for Magneto since he's the obvious choice for this battle. It might take some time to recover from that one, and I'm not just talking about his physical wounds.
Number 10, Shazam and Injustice. I'm starting off this countdown with a pretty brutal and pretty much upsetting Superman win, but it's nonetheless an incredibly quick and easy win by Superman that shows how he can wildly outmatch members of even the Justice League. In the Injustice games, Superman is the tyrant ruler of the Earth. Most of the other heroes have either joined him or joined Batman as part of an effort to thwart Superman and bring him down. One of the heroes who remained on Superman's side was actually Billy Batson, Shazam. This is kind of surprising to mostly everyone, but seeing that Billy Batson is only a kid, it starts to make a little bit more sense. It also makes it very, 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 very brutal when Superman kills Shazam for turning on Superman and mentioning the dead Lois Lane. Superman kills him extremely quickly, using his frost breath to freeze Shazam's mouth shut, stopping him from using his signature phrase, and then melting his brain through his eyes with his heat vision. It made me immediately hate this version of Superman, but it was also a super embarrassing and sad way for Shazam to go out. Number 9, Out of This World Punch. Whenever Bizarro would show up back in the day, it always felt like he was kind of like that weird cousin that you try to get out of talking to as soon as possible. When Bizarro gets lost and believes the people of his world are destroyed, he returns back to Earth and tries to kidnap Lois Lane to repopulate the Bizarro world. Superman and Batman have visited it in the future though, so it's kind of impossible that it's been destroyed. Superman's right. The Bizarro world is actually perfectly fine. So, to get Bizarro back home, Superman, after incapacitating Bizarro, finds the point where he landed on the Earth and literally just punches him back the direction he came, all the way back to his own planet, and then shows him that his planet is perfectly fine. This one is a tiny bit caring rather than embarrassing, but could you imagine getting a single punch from the guy you came to fight that just sends you across the universe back to your homeworld, when he could have just dragged you there too? Number 8. Throwing an ape through time. The stories in the 1950s were crazy. In Superman number 127, we were introduced to Titano the Super Ape. He started off as a smart ape that was sent into space, but then was accidentally exposed to radiation from 2 colliding meteors. This, for some reason, gave Titano the ability to fire rays of green kryptonite out of his eyes. I don't know. Obviously, that is a problem for Superman though, a big one. Luckily, Superman's girlfriend is able to trick Titano into wearing lead sunglasses that stop the kryptonite's rays, at which point, Superman just picked up the giant ape and threw him back through time. Superman chucked this super monkey through time. Like, how do you come back from that? You don't. You just give up. Number 7. Roles reversed. There have been a few times where Superman loses his powers. The one I want to talk about, though, is from All-Star Superman Volume 1, number 12. Clark Kent has lost his powers, and thanks to a serum, Lex Luthor has gained powers. After Lex makes threats against the Daily Planet staff, Clark shoots Lex with a gravity gun. The gravity gun starts quickly draining his powers, and gives him super sensory input after he defeats Superman in single combat in front of the media. Once his powers drain away though, Lex goes to attack Superman in a fit of anger. The recently beaten up, depowered Superman is still no pushover though, as he takes out Lex with one single, non-superpowered punch to the face. This was also still in front of all the media he had just declared his dominion of Earth in front of, too.
Number 6. Surprise Spider-Man. Surprise, it's Spider-Man. In Superior Spider-Man issue number 31, we get to see Spider-Man embarrass Green Goblin when his return surprises him. You see, Norman thinks that Spider-Man is actually Superior Spider-Man, aka Otto Octavius, but Spider-Man reveals that it's not Otto driving this time around, and that Peter Parker is truly Spider-Man once more. And of course, you know what that means. Green Goblin is going down, and Spider-Man is going to make fun of his man purse while he does it. Of course, Peter himself is also surprised to find Norman has changed his face, but this doesn't prevent him from kicking Green Goblin's butt, helping to free Otto's love, Anna Maria, and save the day. Number 5. A not so shocking defeat. Of course, Shocker is generally considered to be a B or even C list Spider-Man villain, and as a result he gets made fun of a lot in the comics normally. But it's somehow even more embarrassing in the Ultimate Universe. In issue number 8 of Ultimate Spider-Man, the issue opens with Spider-Man taking on Shocker and making embarrassingly quick work of him, asking who exactly he's supposed to be, the vibrator? Because yeah, the shock he's emitting is pretty weak. The other hilarious point here is that Spider-Man then turns the shock back on the Shocker, jamming his guns and basically causing him to shock himself. Ouch. Number 4. Watch your step. This embarrassing defeat comes to us from the pages of issue 230 of the Amazing Spider-Man comic. In this 2-part story, Spider-Man took on the unstoppable power of the Juggernaut. While physically Peter struggled, Spider-Man eventually figured out a way to put a stop to Juggernaut without having to try and match his strength. Instead, he jumped on his head and he covered his eyes. Because they were fighting in a construction site, as Juggernaut flailed around trying to basically get the spider off his head, he accidentally stumbled into some wet cement, sinking down deep and finding himself trapped. So apparently take Juggernaut's eyesight away and he'll basically defeat himself because he's so clumsy. At least that's how it went down this time. Spider-Man of course just leapt to safety after Juggernaut was confirmed as stuck, taking the opportunity to make fun of all of his clumsiness. Poor Juggernaut. Stumblefoot, I think that's what he calls him. You Stumblefoot. Number 3, Back in Black. During the events of the Back in Black storyline, Peter dons his old black costume while trying to hunt down the person responsible for shooting Aunt May. He ends up discovering that Kingpin was behind the hit. In truth, it had actually been a hit put on Peter Parker after it was revealed that he was Spider-Man, but Aunt May was shot instead by accident. As Aunt May lay in the hospital fighting for her life, Peter decided to pay Kingpin a visit in prison. Not caring about his identity any longer, he even removed the top half of his suit, wanting Kingpin to know that this is Peter Parker fighting him, not Spider-Man. Peter brutally beats Kingpin up, humiliating him in front of the other inmates. The whole point is to show Kingpin just how strong Peter is and how he could easily kill Fisk, should he want to. He leaves Kingpin just barely alive to live with the humiliation of what happened, but does warn if Aunt May dies, then he'll be back to finish the job. Considering Fisk is all about being the strongest, most powerful guy in the room, this whole fight would be pretty embarrassing for him. Number 2, Hubris. A lot of Spider-Man's villains carry a certain kind of pride around when it comes to taking on Spidey. They often see themselves as better than Spider-Man, which is how they know they are sure to win. They also often see themselves as better than each other as well. And yet, often they don't end up winning. One of the most embarrassing and smartest defeats occurred when one of Spider-Man's most iconic villains had his ego used against him. Yep, we're talking about Norman Osborn. At this point in time, Norman was actually also bonded to the Carnage symbiote, turning him into the villain that we would refer to as Red Goblin. Well, together these two seemed pretty unstoppable. Armed with both the Goblin serum powers and Carnage's power set, Spider-Man managed to defeat Osborn by getting him to ditch the symbiote. Got in his head. And all it took was taunting Norman to do this, implying that a victory while bonded to the Carnage symbiote would be more a victory for the symbiote than Norman himself, and implying that Osborn couldn't beat Spider-Man alone. This prompted Norman to ditch Carnage, which of course resulted in him being defeated by Spider-Man and company. But really, Spider-Man. Number 1, defeated by laughter. And of course, this list would not be complete if we did not mention one of the most embarrassing defeats of all time, and just in general, most embarrassing villains. Aw, sorry Peter. Paste Pot Pete. This one went down during the Spider-Man Human Torch team-up series in issue number 1. Here, Paste Pot Pete is attempting to get revenge on the Human Torch, aka Johnny Storm, when he runs into Spider-Man. Spider-Man doesn't even fight this poor guy, he just defeats him by embarrassing him. When Peter Petruski reveals his intent and his villainous name of Paste Pot Pete, Spider-Man reacts not by attacking him, but by falling to the ground, laughing at the idea of his ridiculous villain name. Paste Pot Pete ends up just walking away, deciding he should probably change his name. Later on, he would become Trapster, which is a lot better, but still not great in terms of villain names that, you know, aren't ridiculous in some way.
Coming in at number 10, we've got an honorable mention for the time that the Immortal Hulk buried a similarly immortal villain alive within a mountain, in an incident that was a bit less embarrassing and a bit more existentially terrifying. While on the run, the Hulk found himself running into a mad scientist known as Dr. Fry, who had attempted to conquer death through the use of gamma radiation and had accidentally both poisoned his hometown and turned himself into a glowing skeletal creature that would cannibalize anyone stumbling across his mountain cave. Since he was unable to kill him, the Hulk wound up trapping Dr. Fry within his mountain cave without the use of his arms or legs, essentially burying him alive. Note to self: do not get on the Hulk's bad side while also being immortal. Coming in at number 9, we've got either the best or worst Hulk pun of all time used against the Red King. Following his exile from planet Earth, the Hulk found himself as a gladiator combatant on the planet Sakaar, battling in fights overseen by the cruel leader of the planet, Angmo Asan, aka the Red King. In a final battle to take back the planet, the Hulk led a force of rebels against their captors, and went head-to-head against the Red King inside his own arena in a sword duel to the death. And while the fight itself was pretty cool, the icing on the cake was the final pun as the Hulk defeated his foe with his sword and cried out, "Hulk slash." Coming in at number 8, we have the Incredible Hulk versus Black Bolt, King of the Inhumans. Following the Hulk's extended stay on Sakaar, and following the death of the love that he'd found on the planet, the Hulk began making his way back to Earth to face off against the heroes that had sent him into the cosmos in the first place. He was intercepted on the Earth's moon by Black Bolt, who used his incredibly destructive voice to whisper enough at the Hulk when he refused to back down. An attack that likely would have killed anyone else, but left the Hulk still standing, grinning, and saying, "I didn't come here for a whisper, I want to hear you scream," which just might be the most badass thing ever dared to be said to Black Bolt. Coming in at number 7, we have the Ultimate Hulk literally eating Herr Kaiser. As one of the first major enemies faced by the Ultimate superhero team, Kaiser was a Chitauri warrior that had infiltrated Earth during the Second World War and was able to fight toe-to-toe with both Nick Fury and the Super Serum enhanced Captain America. As a last-ditch effort to defeat the villain, the Ultimates unleashed the Hulk to defeat their shape-shifting foe, who decided to ensure Kaiser could never return by eating his corpse and then destroying the feces that resulted from the meal. There's overkill, and then there's being overkilled by the Hulk.
Number 6. Chased with the Sun. When Jimmy Olsen was on a game show back in Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen number 33 in the Silver Age of comics, there was a special prism that appeared in a dump that for some reason turned the thoughts of the game show contestants into real things. So, when Jimmy answered a question with Jack Frost, that's who appeared. Jack Frost threatened to plunge the world into a new ice age. So what was Superman's solution? Simple. Just go and move the sun closer to the Earth. Not only was this a ridiculous feat, but it was incredibly embarrassing looking for Jack Frost, who basically had to run away from Superman chasing him with the sun. Once Jack Frost had retreated into a deep, dark, cold cave under the Earth, Superman put the sun back where he got it so it didn't destroy the Earth. He did all this as nonchalantly as moving some furniture. Number 5. All shook up. After his infamous death at the hands of Doomsday, and his not exactly surprising return, Superman faces off against the cyborg version of himself, Hank Henshaw, that took over the role of Superman in his place. The cyborg was actually tarnishing the name of Superman. Hank ruined Supes' memorial, and more importantly, he had just blown up Coast City, killing millions. When Superman actually returns from the dead, he doesn't have his powers back just yet. So the conflict actually lasts a little while. But once Superman gets his powers back, you best believe he beats the sucker. In one page, no less, by punching him through the chest and then using his super speed to shake him so fast that he falls apart. Superman shook this guy to death. Number 4. The Super Showdown. In Superman number 153, a group of Kryptonian criminals who were banished to the Phantom Zone come to the small western town of Drywood Gulch. The criminals dress as cowboys to hide their identity until our boy Superman arrives on the scene. The criminals had created Phantom Zone powered pistols that are capable of banishing whoever is shot into the Phantom Zone. And they give one to Superman, challenging him to a duel, since we're in a western town. How on earth, though, will Superman outdraw 8 super beings? Great Caesar's ghost! He melted all their ray guns moments before they drew. Yes, he cheated, but they challenged Earth's most powerful defender to a gunfight. He ain't got time for that. Number 3, Batman. There have been many times that Superman and Batman are pitted against each other. It's always a fun story, and it's always a big seller. And for some reason, we tend to see Batman with an edge. But in Lex Luthor, Man of Steel, Lex Luthor gives Bruce Wayne a shard of green kryptonite to use against Superman. Historically, this has always been an issue, but in this story, Superman just uses his super breath to blow the shard out of Bruce Wayne's hands. That's all he had to do. After it falls to the ground, Superman drags Batman through the air and drops him. Superman throws a punch at Batman, but just as he's about to turn Batman into a red smear, he stops short of smashing his nose, just to prove a point. Superman can easily destroy Batman if he wants to. Yes, Bruce can win and has multiple times, but with so much more effort than Superman ever would need to put in. And this proves it. Number 2, Revenge Denied. After discovering the planet of the Superman Revenge Squad, Superman charges at the planet with a full frontal assault, armed with nothing but his abilities and a strange package attached to his chest. The Revenge Squad fires all of their most dangerous, most powerful weapons at Superman, firing everything they think will take out the Man of Steel. They all impact on Kal-El, and his villains think they've won. For a moment. But when the dust settled, they didn't even leave a scratch. Instead, the package on Soup's chest detonated, encircling the whole planet in a layer of mist. Superman then yells down to the villains, explaining if any of them pass through the mist, leaving the planet, they will suffer total amnesia, forgetting any hatred they have for Superman. So, they can remain trapped on their base, being angry and upset, or they can rejoin the cosmos devoid of all grudges. Either way, he doubts he will ever see them again, and then he just flies back home. Cold. Hey y'all, I hope you're enjoying this list so far. We're gonna get on to the number 1, but before we do, I just wanna say thanks for watching. Don't forget to whack that like button like Superman with so many of these villains. It really helps us out here. Okay, on to number 1. Number 1, RSVP. In the Man of Steel story, Lex Luthor and Superman have been rebooted. Lex Luthor is an evil billionaire instead of a mad scientist, and he is also ginger. Clearly evil. Lex is so rich and powerful he believes he owns Metropolis, and by extension, he believes he has a say over the things that Superman does. He's essentially got a humongous ego, which is always the path to an embarrassing downfall. When Luthor plans a terrorist attack on his yacht to test Superman, he sends an invitation to the boy in red and blue. Superman just, doesn't show up. That's it. He doesn't even give Lex the time of day. To make it worse, Lex is arrested and shamed by the mayor. The embarrassment of this is the inciting incident that caused the rivalry between Lex and Superman for this version of the characters.
Number 10, General Koi and Prince Baran get spooked. Wrapping up the events involving Terra Verde's civil unrest and the face-off with Spore in issue number 23 of the original Wolverine series, Wolverine decided upon his return to Madripoor that it was time to give General Koi and Prince Baran a taste of their own medicine. While Prince Baran was a sometimes ally of Wolverine's, for this story he was more playing the role of sometimes villain or antagonist that he's also known for in the series. As such, in the middle of the night, Wolverine pays a visit to both men and kidnaps them. They awaken blindfolded in the sewers, where Wolverine explains the extent of what can happen if the vial of the drug that Koi chose to keep were unleashed on someone, how it would basically make them go insane. It could also potentially unleash a darker evil who was only just defeated, Spore. Really not cool for you to keep that vial, Koi. Koi and Baran fear that Wolverine has administered the drug to them, terrified. They discover, however, that this is not the case, and instead that the only threat in these sewers is an equally deadly and very angry Wolverine. Horrified, they run in fear and escape from the sewers, only to be laughed at by the people of Madripoor as they surface, covered in sewage. Hopefully they learn their lesson. Knowing General Koi though, probably not, because then he does a lot of other stuff. Number 9, unintentionally embarrassed Sabretooth. Sure, Wolverine is all for putting Victor in his place. Once he met the guy and knew how bad he was, that is. But before that, the Creeds were just a family that Wolverine kinda got tied up in. Logan ended up captured and in a circus being used as an attraction. Something about the X-Men and circuses, I tell you, it happens a lot. This was really a low point in Wolverine's life as he was suffering from severe depression after the death of Rose, and then following that, the death of his wolf pack by Nathaniel Essex's Bear, which was really upsetting because he'd taken a lot of solace in his pack. In the end, it was Clara Creed who managed to reach out to Logan, saving him both physically and emotionally. The two fell in love with one another quickly, but it didn't end well for either of them. Saul Creed, Clara's little brother, sold them out. Once this was revealed, Logan felt the only way to protect Clara was to get rid of Saul, permanently. Clara was ready to cut Saul out of her life, but didn't want to see him killed. Because Logan killed Saul, she rejected him. And because Logan killed Saul, Victor interpreted it as a slight, embarrassed that Logan had been the one to kill Saul, as Saul was Victor's to torment. Victor would visit Saul each year on his birthday to beat him up. So yeah, hence why Sabretooth visits Wolverine each year now instead, because he was like, how dare you do this to me? This is unacceptable. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear about more times that Wolverine kind of embarrassed his villains intentionally and unintentionally, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, blew up Dracula. If you've been surprised by Dracula appearing as a Wolverine villain in his current 2020 series, don't be. These two actually have a lot of history, and the mutants themselves have also tangled with vampires in general in the past. Old Man Logan even faced Dracula before, when mutants were disappearing and he was on the trail of tracking down his good pal and one of his sidekicks back in the day, Jubilee. This time around, however, Dracula seems to be interested in harnessing using Wolverine's blood for its healing properties, and using the blood to help all vampires walk in the daylight without danger of going up in flames and perishing. Wolverine, however, literally blew up Dracula's well-laid plans when he took part in a plan to turn his body into a bomb. Well, more a devoid of consciousness clone body. This body was then offered to Dracula by his less than faithful servant Omega Red, which means instead of walking in the daylight, much of Drax's following instead went up in smoke, as Wolverine's clone's blood was altered to be like liquid sunshine to the vamps, thick with photonic cells, and so he became a dirty bomb. Or well, his clone became a dirty bomb. Number 7. Avon Calling. Not necessarily a great super villain of Wolverine's per se, but in issue number 30 of the original Wolverine series, Wolverine managed to embarrass a whole team of Madripoorian militia and palace guards when he was dealing with the masterminds behind the Lazarus Project. As he and his allies aim to infiltrate the palace and confront General Coy, Broker, not to be confused with the Power Broker, and Dr. Page, Wolverine walks right up to the guard, and when he asks who goes there, answers, Avon Calling. Wolverine can be nonchalant and make jokes here because he's got Karma on his team. Rather than respond with an attack, Karma basically takes hold of the guard's mind and then has him take them into the palace under the guise of his prisoners. Of course, this ruse doesn't last for too long, but it does last long enough to get them into the palace at least, and to basically where they need to go.
Coming in at number 6, we have the Ultimate Hulk versus Ultimate Abomination. In another example of the Ultimate Hulk being vicious as hell, the Abomination was an attempt to recreate the conditions that had made the Hulk, but hoping to improve the process and allow him to be controlled. The Abomination had all of the Hulk's strength, but retained all of his human brain power after the transformation, which was intended to help the Abomination permanently put down the Hulk, but still led to Abomination being absolutely torn to shreds, with the Hulk adding salt to the wound by claiming, "You think too much," a final backhanded insult to show that being smarter isn't always going to lead to better outcomes. Coming in at number 5, we have the original Marvel Universe's Hulk versus Abomination, which somehow manages to be even more of a complete victory than the Ultimate versions. After Abomination was blamed for the death of Bruce Banner's wife, Betty Ross, the Hulk went on a complete rampage to destroy Abomination, something the villain intended to finally figure out which of the two green giants was stronger. But in a final humiliating moment, the Hulk had the opportunity to finally kill Abomination, but instead chose to revert back to Bruce Banner, showing his humanity and proving to Abomination that Banner had the strongest willpower of all, the ultimate defeat for Abomination. Coming in at number 4, we have Hulk smashing Loki in the original MCU Avengers film. For years, comic book fans had been yearning to see a proper adaptation of the Jade Giant on screen, and while earlier live-action Hulk films were ambitious in their own ways and had their own unique moments, the most iconic and defining Hulk moment finally came when the Hulk joined the Avengers in their first team-up movie and interrupted Loki's monologuing to give him the beatdown he deserved. This was the Hulk we'd all been waiting to see, and hearing Cap tell him to smash, or the Hulk saying puny god, they were definitely worth the wait. Coming in at number 3, we have the Hulk killing Maestro with the explosion that created him in the first place. Bruce Banner often has to face off against different mental versions of the Hulk inside his head, but this alternate version of himself from a post-apocalyptic future is the real deal. Naming himself Maestro after conquering what remains of America following a nuclear winter, this version of the Hulk had become far stronger than the Hulk's usual starting strength, with years of sucking up deadly radiation only improving his ferocity and power. When the real Hulk encountered this warlord version of himself, the only way he was able to finally come out on top was by literally warping the Maestro back in time to be killed by the same gamma bomb that created the Hulk back in the 60s. A nice bit of circular karma that showed that Bruce Banner could outwit even his older self. Coming in at number 2, we have Zombie Hulk versus Zombie Thanos. The Hulk and Thanos might not have gotten to get a proper physical rematch in the MCU, but in the Marvel multiverse, their zombie versions had a fight that has to be seen to be believed. 40 years after the initial infection that turned their universe into an undead wasteland, a zombified Thanos decides to pick a fight with an undead Hulk, claiming that the the Hulk has eaten more flesh than his fair share. With the eloquence that only a zombie can provide, the Hulk responded by crushing Thanos' skull between his clapping palms, instantly destroying the weakened Mad Titan and showing that maybe you shouldn't tell the Hulk he's been eating too much lately. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the time that the Ultimate Hulk threw the Wolverine's legs up a mountain. While the Wolverine might not count as an outright villain, at this point in the Ultimate Universe, the Hulk and Wolverine were definitely enemies. Tasked by Nick Fury to kill Bruce Banner, the Wolverine got his completely kicked and woke up after their battle to find his lower half entirely missing, ripped off by the Hulk. To make matters worse, his sense of smell let him know that if he wanted to recover his legs and rejoin them to his body with his healing ability, he'd need to climb 4 miles up a mountain. Many people have tried to fight the Hulk over the years, but few people have gotten defeated so embarrassingly as the Wolverine did when his legs got thrown 4 miles away.